I'm a member of the Early Learning Council, and today I'll be acting as your chair. Pam Curtis, our board chair, is recovering from some surgery and will be joining us on the call. The gavel's on its way down. I'm going to go ahead and just start. My watch says 9 a.m. There aren't any clocks in here, so we'll proceed. Good morning, council members, member of the public. We have a very busy but exciting agenda ahead of us today, and we'll begin. Teresa, would you please call the roll?
Excuse me for just one moment.
Yep.
Let me know if I miss anybody. Dana Harbinarni. Here. Eva Ripito. Kim Williams.
Here.
Roberta Weber. Carrie Feldhofer. Here. Norm Smith.
Here.
Jada Ripley. Oh.
Here.
Lynn Saxton.
Here.
Vicki Bishop. Dick Withnow.
Here.
Krista Rude.
Present.
Rob Saxton. Janet Doherty Smith.
Here.
Charles McGee.
Here.
Jim Tierney is excused. Pam Curtis and Marlene Yesquin will be joining by phone later.
Great, thank you, Teresa. And my understanding is a quorum is 9, and I see 9 people. So I think we're good to proceed. Okay, our first item is the approval of minutes from the May Council meeting. You'll find the minutes for the May Council meeting from Pendleton in your binders. Any questions or comments on the minutes? And if not, can we get a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. There is a red folder going around with some updates of interest, so just keep passing that among yourselves and we'll get that done. We now have 15 minutes for council member updates, so who would like to begin? Are there no updates?
Oh,
Oh, okay. Updates.
I'm going
You
to
got
have,
me
will you
liberated
update
here.
on the best practice? I wasn't in attendance.
So yes, I will update on the OEIB Best Practices Committee, which I attended the most recent meeting, and we had a good, lengthy discussion focusing very intently on the need to communicate the best practice requirements in a manner and a form that is accessible to people who are going to be using those standards, but also to the general public who needs to have the full understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. So I have a document in my inbox right now that will foster that discussion at the next meeting, and I think we'll make some significant progress in being sure that as we adopt best practice standards, we're communicating them in a manner that is transparent and easily understood. We've done a lot of work, but our continuing concern is that it is so deep and complex that it's hard to get a full understanding. So that's, Kim, I think that's all.
I have one.
Jada.
Madam Chair, as council members are thinking about the work that they have been doing to make their comments, I would just like to offer our thanks from the division staff and my own. Council members have been busy reading grants for both the hubs as well as some of the competitions that we've had with the innovation, the early literacy. You've been sitting on subcommittees for OEIB as well as your own equity subcommittee. And you have been busy, so thank you very much, because we couldn't do this work without your support.
Okay, if there are, yes, Krista.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I had the opportunity about a week ago to participate in the Oregon Head Start Association Directors Meeting, where I shared just the score sheet from our strategic planning work, or the master planning work, and received really positive feedback from all of those directors, and even inspiration for them to use that format in terms of thinking about their grants back to the federal government. So great feedback from them in that regard.
Great, thank you.
And Madam Chair, if I might add,
Yes.
as part of one of the directors, it is going around in the listserv, and a lot of directors are adopting that as part of their strategic plan.
Thank you.
So it sounds like wonderful alignment.
Thank you.
Dana, were you going to say? No. Okay. I'd also like to say for those of us joining on the phone that member Bobby Weber just joined us. Welcome, Bobby. We're glad you're here. We have several council members who have to leave at noon today due to other commitments, and so I'm going to ask our executive director of the ELC, Jada, to split her director's report, which usually comes at the end of the meeting, and we're going to have a portion of it here so that we can address some matters before people leave at noon. So, Jada?
I would like to give a report on the 2% increases that went to all early learning programs from the 2013-15 legislation. As you recall, at the end of 13-15, the last day of the legislature, they put a 2% holdback on all programs across the state. So what that has meant is during the last year, we have been working with all programs that the Early Learning Division have, which would be Healthy Families, it would be the Relief Nurseries, it would be the Oregon Pre-Kindergarten programs, to be able to put those 2% out because they did get restored due to much advocacy on behalf of the program. So we were very excited about that. The smaller amounts to the Relief Nurseries as well as the Healthy Families just went out directly, but there was a significant amount of money to the Oregon Pre-Kindergarten program. So what we did is there were 3 things that we looked at. Is every program in the state for Oregon Pre-Kindergarten received a 2% slot increase across the board. Then we also looked, as we were looking at things, is that there was some inequity in the way that slots had been funded from the past, and there were almost in some cases $1,000 difference per child in the funding. So we looked at the 14 lowest funded programs and brought them up to the state rate of $8,500. So that was a huge equity movement to be able to address those lower funded programs across the state. The third that we did is to increase the number of children that had previously in unserved and underserved areas, and that was on a competitive basis, and that was slot increases. The last full time that anyone saw increases to the Oregon Pre-K were in the 2007-9 biennium, and there was a significant $39 million increase to programs across the board. So I wanted to make sure, and at that point they added 1,700 children and another 1,300 on a competitive basis. So today we have 12,210 served in 28 Oregon Pre-Kindergarten programs. Excuse me, there's 12,000 in the dual programs of Oregon Pre-K and Head Start, and there are 7,200 that are done by Oregon Pre-K. So I believe that we are the first state in the nation, and Krista can back this up here, that we actually have more state-funded Head Start slots than we have federally funded Head Starts because of the strong support that the legislature have done. So I just wanted to make sure we were kind of doing a little bit of update. So what you know is that when we have slot competition, we always will end up with way more requests than we will have funding to be able to do that. And so we had 390 slots available. We had 1,126 requests for slot expansion. So it was a very competitive process among the Head Start and OPK programs. 22 requested, 5 chose not to, and 15 programs were awarded slots based on the highest scores on the application process and distribution throughout the state. So I wanted to give you about 3 examples of those that happened. One was the Oregon Child Development Coalition, which has partnered with the Klamath Tribes in Chiloquin School District, and they will be opening 2 Oregon pre-kindergarten classrooms down there to serve 40 Native American children. This is a new effort down there, and one of the things that we know is we were able to look at that because in the sequestration from the federal government, the Chiloquin group lost many slots in the tribe. So that was something that we were excited about doing with state-funded dollars. The second one I wanted to tell you about was Portland Public Schools Head Start worked closely with their school district to reopen the Clarendon School as an early childhood center, and Portland will often describe this as their own mini hubs within their school district. And so there were funding given to that to be able to work with the African American Hispanic children and their families in a hub-like approach. Southern Oregon is expanding in the Illinois Valley area, remote and isolated in Josephine County. The last mill closed this past year and causing deeper and really high unemployment. So we ended up with many more families in the homelessness and poverty. So they'll serve an additional 31 in that area. All of the programs that were awarded demonstrated strong partnerships with their existing or forming early learning hubs. So I think that we are already starting to see the communities work together with those existing program funding streams. Are there further questions from council members on the process? You do have in, Teresa, are you, this is already in their packets, or are you handing it out?
This is in the packet.
That one's in the packet.
Okay. If you look specifically to the Oregon Pre-K expansion grants, there is a specific section, and actually this is a good news story. If you look at this, this is all the funding that you have been involved in giving, and it's, yeah, I have mine's in black and white. So on the back you will see a map.
It's in your notebooks, council members, on the
It
left-hand
looks
side.
like this, and it has a map on the back. So what we have done is we've mapped out the investments that have been done with the early literacy, also with the innovation and the beginning of the hubs and the Oregon Pre-K expansion. So I wanted you all to make sure to see that. We will continue to add to this map. The one difference that I do want to point out with the Oregon Pre-K expansion grants is those are done to grant and aid. So this was not a full-on competitive for the slots. It was only available to those existing programs. So it is an award to a grant and aid, and this process is not appealable.
Did you want to, thank you, Jada. Any questions from council members or comments?
We're reaching 60,000 children and families, so what's that the percentage? What would be optimum, or what's the gross number of families? The 60,000, what percentage of in a ideal, the grant is reaching 60, is that 50%, or is that 40%, or is that good, bad?
You know, Dick, I don't know that specific answer, and so I think maybe I should do that as part of this proposal for all of you, is to actually look at
Sure.
what that percent is for each of these. So the early literacy grants are 60,000, and so if you look at, we have about 225,000 kids birth to
That's what I
6.
meant. Okay.
And also, perhaps a breakdown of sort of how it falls into poverty, ethnicity, all that good stuff.
That's a good one too. We did do that more in terms of the Oregon Pre-K and the Head Start. If you look on that one, what you'll see is the services by, because we have that data in this program. So that's one that we actually will be watching more closely, because this, remember, was a former Department of Education program.
Okay, further questions or comments on this? This is the partial director report. This is not the full director report. The remainder will be at the end of our meeting. Yes.
Another question. So you mentioned, Jada, in knowing about the hubs, you mentioned sort of a yearning, a wanting to have sort of applicants partner with hubs. What does that look like? Like, when we say that, like, is there a clear and specific definition? Is there, like, does it mean, you know, I'm going to 5 meetings a month? Sort of what's that engagement look like, and how are we being clear to applicants about that?
That's a great question. And
Go ahead and start, and I'm happy to
Okay.
fill in.
I think that one of the things, as we said, is we said existing and developing, and so those are those community partnerships. And so what that meant was significant work with hub organizations to determine those targeted areas. So what you will see is that each one of the hubs received a significant amount of data to survey their community and look and see where those areas of investment needed to be. And so many of these programs were working or are part of the hub, and so the investments are targeted to those kids most in need within their communities. It was done a little different in each community, much like we awarded hubs. So they're very community specific. But if you look at, and we will have some testimony later on in the day, but for example, Marion County identified 15 schools as their highest need areas, and they targeted that. The Head Start expansion grant will also go into there. So what we're looking at is we're taking our need and we're funding our investment.
So does that mean that, so when we say engagement, I forgot the particular word you used, does that mean we're using the hub's data and that demonstrates engagement? Does that mean, like, what does that mean?
Go ahead.
So I think that I want to step back from, to get to that point, I want to start with what we're trying to do at the hub level. Is the original goal of the hubs was to, with a clear recognition that early learning is probably not sufficiently funded in Oregon right now. Right. That we are trying to drive collaborations to leverage results, because all the money for early learning does not go through the hubs. So hubs as an entity are required to drive to a result using data and using a range of funds, some that come through them directly, some that do not. In the proposals that came before the council, one of the things that we saw and what we have been hoping for the last 4 years is that communities begin to work together to leverage net result. And that can mean in some communities direct partnerships for operating programs. In other communities, it is shared data systems. In some communities, there's been some exciting examples already put in motion where people in one county have reached out across county lines to work together to that common result. So we're not prescribing how that collaboration occurs, but we know it has to occur in order for the net impact to be significantly different than what we've historically done in the state. So I think, and I think we can give additional examples, concrete examples, Megan's not here today, but we can do that, of where those collaborations have already produced gains when people work beyond their specific organization to partner to drive to the outcomes.
So I get that. Part of my sort of asking is, one of the, in Multnomah County, there was someone who applied, did not receive funding. What was told was because they weren't engaged in the hub. This person sort of believed that they were, and so I think it's us probably figuring out some clear. So while if we're gonna be flexible about it, and if we're gonna use it to base funding recommendations for or not, probably us wanting to be somewhat clear around sort of what's the bare minimum and how is that demonstrated.
Right. So Charles, that's a really good point, and I think that we will get better as we award round 2. And we did a lot of initiatives all together, and this is probably the very messiest time for everyone in the state. And I think the other piece that will be added to this is the work that you'll hear of the equity work group. Also, I think there are a number of things that this time next year we will have forgotten about because we will be much more organized.
I want to underscore, though, that this was a competitive process, so the scoring is related to a variety of factors, and again, multiple entities were not funded based on that scoring. Right. So just for, okay. Any other discussion on this topic before we move on? Okay, I'm going to move us on to agenda item 4, which is the OEI subcommittee updates, and Kim and I kind of leapt over the fence and did ours first. So that leaves it, Dick, for you on the Outcomes and Investment Subcommittee of the OEIB.
This last, the bulletin that Nancy Golden sends out every Friday gave a outline of what we did this last month, particularly about each agency will be presenting at least one strategy to reduce costs or repurpose resources and detailing how they will use public input to refine and inform their budget proposals. The meeting that we had 2 weeks ago, we heard from Early Learning Council, Policy and Literacy and Development, and of Oregon Department of Education, and then the Child Health Director, and Dana gave her presentation there. I think that's, we're just continuing on to our charge is to align with the OEIB budget strategies and priorities and achieve key outcomes on the achievement compacts that are aligned with the Early Learning Hub's metrics. And this is what Charles is talking about. And so we're on process to do that each month. We're meeting for the outcomes and where the investments will be, and to prepare the budget.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Dick? All right, good. Next report, Janet and Harriet. Is Harriet on the phone with us today?
No, Harriet is excused.
Okay. So Janet, on the Equity and Partnership Subcommittee.
Our committee is going to recommend to the Outcomes and Investment Subcommittee, DIC, create an aligned GED system. As everybody pretty much knows, 25% of students in Oregon do not graduate from high school, and a limited number have pursued in the past the GED. So there's an effort to refocus the GED. There will be 2 options: a GED, which will be high school equivalent, and GED with honors, which would be college ready, college and career ready. And the focus is on a group of students or young people called Opportunity Youth. They include students who never attended high school, students who didn't complete high school, and youth with a high school diploma or equivalent who are disconnected from post-secondary education and or who are unable to gain a foothold in the labor market. The goal is to create a shoreline approach rather than a pipeline approach. So there's many more ways to achieve a high school equivalency. Right now, the only option is to go complete high school or complete a GED. In other states, there are other options, so we're recommending that other states' programs be looked at. But for right now, we want to raise not the quality, raise people's impressions of what a GED stands for. And one of the interesting things I learned in the meeting was that that there are barriers at the higher education level. I don't know why this didn't dawn on me, but that schools of higher education do not actively recruit and embrace students with a GED. And that's not inclusive, but it's a bigger challenge for some of those students to get into post-secondary education. So.
Thank you, Janet. Excellent report. Questions and comments on this topic? I do want to say, as someone who works with GED students every day, that I'm thrilled to hear there will be a GED with honors option. Many of these students are exceptionally talented, and because of life circumstance are on a different track, so connecting that to the higher ed system is progress, and very excited about that. Do we have a timeline for implementation?
I think that, well, the equity subcommittee some ways it's going to be between higher ed and high schools to really push this forward. So
Okay.
ours is a recommendation.
Okay.
We're not really the people that can move and shake this, but I think good work has been done. I do want to say that the 25% of students who don't graduate, don't complete college, are overrepresented with youth of color and youth living in poverty. And so that is the primary reason that our committee is focused on this.
Excellent, thank you. Questions? Okay, we can move on to an update for our council work groups, and because we're kind of rocking and rolling along here, do we have Marlene on the phone? Marlene?
Marlene will be joining.
Later, so we can go ahead, Dana, you can do that piece, okay.
Anyone on the phone?
Part-
Is there anyone?
Do we have anyone on the phone, just so we know? Gosh, okay,
We are
great.
expecting Marlene, Pam, and Jim to join probably about 10:30.
Got it. Okay, Dana.
Thank you, Chair Saxton. So as I spoke in Pendleton, I just wanted to really give a brief update on the Child and Family Wellbeing Measurements Work Group. So this is a work group that you might recall as being chartered on behalf of the Joint Early Learning Council and Health Policy Board. The group is being charged with delivering a set of recommended shared measures that cross our systems. The goal is that these measures would be able to drive collective action for children and families at both the local level and the state level. And I'm really excited about this work. I don't have a lot of updates because I've really come to realize how difficult multiple cross-sector agency community work is to put in place. We are nearly finalizing the work group membership, and again, a lot of thought being put in the representation both across the state, sectors, demographics, et cetera, and hope to have that final information within the week. We also are working to confirm a consultant. This work has really driven both a lot of local attention, but really a lot of national attention, as in so many things we are doing here in Oregon. This is really beyond a lot of work that is happening nationally on such a strong push towards quality measurement and accountability, but one that crosses all of these sectors. And of course, layered on our hubs and CCO Works here is really quite remarkable. So we want to make sure we're doing this effectively and having the expertise of consultant here. We have funds to support that through our state's the SIM grant that is funded to the State Innovation Model grant to our health system. We'll be able to use that money to supply a consultant. So stay tuned once again, but we're getting closer to having the work group in place. Trying to finalize with summer vacation schedules on all the work group members. I think at minimum we'll have this committee in full force with a consultant in place by September, hopefully before then.
Congratulations, thank you. Questions for Dana? Yes, Dave.
I think this is really a possibility for a really low-hanging fruit. And I think when you talk about the community, be sure you mean the whole friggin' community, because I think, you know, the whether it's the business community or the wellness of you know, what you guys are pushing forward is sweat equity. I mean, there's not per se money involved in that if we change habits and we find. I think there's a lack of showing the value, telling the value to the whole community why this is important. So I just encourage you. I think this is a real opportunity to you know, save some money.
Great, and Dick, we should follow up because I don't know that we've adequately considered for this particular work group the business representation. So let's follow up offline and talk about how that might look.
Cool, okay. Anything else for Dina? Great, it is 9:30 and Bobby, your work group was scheduled for 9:40, so I'm going to give you some extra time there and we look forward to your report. I'd like to invite Kelly Walker, Lisa Harnish, Rhonda Przinski, and Don Woods to come up. When we say come up, where do we want them to come up?
They will be presenting from the table.
From that table, okay.
Bobby, do you want to present yours first?
Whatever makes sense. The definition of affordable quality care that the legislature required the council to do is back to the council for approval or back to us, whatever the council decides. So whether you want to do that as a part of this bigger early childhood, or whether you want to do it first, whatever would work.
Let's do it first.
Okay,
Okay.
tab 2. So, a year ago, exactly, in June of 2013, we brought an early draft of a definition, and going back a little bit further than that, in 4165, the legislature directed the council to create a definition of quality, affordable childcare. And so that task was given to the work group, and we went through multiple drafts and brought the earlier version here. We were given great feedback from the council, and I followed up with different council members afterwards to be sure. But the feedback was to be sure and see this issue through the equity lens, and integrating our new QRIS system at the same time. When we had done the first draft, we hadn't, QRIS wasn't on the ground. It was on the ground in field test. By the time the council met with us in June, go back and strengthen that part, we were told. And so we did do that, and we had Helen, who's here, Visaraga, help us with the language, whether we had captured equity in appropriate ways throughout the paper, and she helped us. So were substantial edits for equity. The hardest part that maybe took us the most work over this last year was we were directed to do a graphic. And here it is.
Yeah, I like it.
Oh, thank you. I mean, this is, and we had help from the Early Learning Division, Brittany Palmer. But this must be version 59. You know, it was, and we've looked at water flowing, we've looked at gardens, we've looked at pipelines, we've looked at, I think Pam's words were something about a hydraulic. And so we did try a lot with water. And we just couldn't get water to work. But we did end up with this trying to capture, and if it works, it captures what the text says, which is this is a balancing act between families, providers, and communities with an infrastructure support from the state. But those are the players, and none of them can make it work by themselves. You can't get to good experiences for children in high quality care that parents can afford to put their children into without these pieces working in an integrated way. And so we did that. We dealt with the issues of sustainability, or more the economics of childcare. They're problematic. We did not solve it, but we've addressed it. So you'll see under childcare providers, we talk about sustainable finances, affordability for families. We talk about percent of household incomes, and but the part of the problem, and Lynn, you were very concrete about this, is childcare tends to be small, and it's hard to be sustainable and small. The National Survey of Early Care and Education just released its findings, and the average center in the United States cares for fewer than 50 children, and has 48 staff. There's reasons for childcare being small. It's in some communities, small is all they can sustain. because there aren't enough families. So if you say only the larger programs can survive, should be invested in, you deprive communities of color, you deprive low-income communities where there are smaller numbers. So it's not a problem. We didn't solve these problems. They are endemic in the way we're dealing with it. But on the positive side, Oregon has so many things going for it. And so the public investments in QRIS, the work we're going to hear more about in continuously strengthening licensing and helping families understand what compliance is and whether their provider is in compliance or not in compliance. Anyway, things that we're going to hear more about. And professional development, which is certainly moving up into the limelight. We're going to talk about it later today, but just in general, there is far more attention being paid to this workforce and the skill set that they need to be able to do this work, and this investment in Oregon's leading in all of those. So I think I'll stop there with and just take questions.
Great. Thank you, Bobby. Great report and understandable graphics, so very nice. I think it's very clear. Okay, questions for Bobby on the document and the recommendations or comments?
It's simple, it's clear.
Yep.
Don't think we need to send it back.
Exciting. Good. Thank you, Norm.
She might jump off a bridge.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. So, Bobby, are we ready to move to the second part of
yes.
our effort here?
I do have one.
Yes, sure.
One observation. I was always told that it's bad form to quote oneself, but I see in the footnotes our chair does quote herself several times.
Cool. That's where the data is. It's not really quoting my opinions. It's quoting what I count.
Madam Chair, I'd
Yes,
like to
ma'am.
kick off this next
Sure.
presentation when you're ready.
Thank you, Jada.
Go ahead, Lisa and Dawn and Kelly. Go ahead, come up.
Eva had something.
Oh, Eva, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right. This is nice, thank you. I just was in a conversation yesterday, and I'm not proposing that we send this back to Bobby. So, but I realized, even though I work with childcare, that it's even bigger than we probably think about it. And I hope that now that we have this definition, that we look to how do we quantify quality for the license exempt, and then we also have, outside of the QRIS, corporate childcare that might not fit into the QRIS system that we have, and so how are we going to look at quality for them so that parents are included in those settings are included there. So that was all I was going to say.
Thank you.
Well, I think that fits
Bobby,
into
did you
this
have-
next. Well, I think that fits better into this next
Okay.
conversation
Perfect.
about where we're going.
Thank you for leading us there, Eva. Jada?
Council members, you'll remember that last July, one of the things that we did as we created the Early Learning Division is that the Office of Child Care is in there, as well as many of the programs that you've been working on and some new grants. And so one of the things that we'd like to do today is start off the first of many discussions, and we called it All Things Child Care. It's the largest part of the system that you are in governance of, and that is part of the responsibility for me as the director. But before this group start and introduce themselves, what I'd also like to do is, in our audience, we have two representatives from Region 10, Paul and Agda. Would you like to stand up? They're spending 3 days here with us, and I know that they have some part of the presentation. They've been working, they've been out in facilities in Oregon, they've been working with various groups, and also have brought news from the federal level and thank you very much to both of you for being here, for the technical assistance and guidance that you've given Oregon. So thank you. I'm very excited about this kickoff because this is actually part of a cross-agency development. New is the quality rating that's part of the Race to the Top. You'll also hear from Rhonda Przynski, who does the DHS part of the subsidy. So pay close attention because this is the beginning of many conversations for the future. You guys.
All right. Okay. So good morning, everybody. For the record, my name is Lisa Harnish, and it's a pleasure to be a part of this illustrious team here this morning. You are incredibly fortunate as a council to have the staff and the team that you do with the Office of Child Care. They work tirelessly to ensure that the child care program is maximized in every way and that we're making good use of the investments that we have in our state. We have an excellent partner with DHS, and it really is a true partnership to ensure that we are benefiting the kids and the families and making sure that kids have the opportunity to be in quality programs. What you will hear today is the first of what I hope is many sessions. Today we're going to cover, the current state, where the kids are in our state, what programs they're a part of, and looking at the investments that we're making in our children. We will also look at how the work that we are doing here as a council lines up directly with the Office of Child Care framework that we have. To ensure that kids are ready for kindergarten, that they are raised in stable and attached families, and that the resources that we have are integrated and maximized. You will also see and hear the emphasis on quality, health, and safety. As we prepare for the anticipated federal rules, there are many opportunities in front of us as a council and as a division to make policy adjustments in how we're approaching this work. And so with that, it really is the first of many conversations that we have that we'll be a part of. There are so many things that are happening here in the Office of Child Care and in the Early Learning Division, and it has been an extreme honor and a pleasure to be a part of that over the year. And it is my honor to introduce Dawn, Kelly, and Rhonda, and I'll let them tell a little bit more about their role here, and so I will turn it over to you guys.
Great.
All right. Thank you.
And I just want to thank Lisa for her service this last year. It's been really great, and I get a little choked up every once in a while. So thank you, Lisa. So I'm Kelly Walker. I'm the Director of Child Care Licensing and Subsidy for the Early Learning Division.
Hi, and I'm Dawn Woods. I'm the Director of Quality Improvement for the division.
And good morning. My name is Rhonda Przynski. I'm with Department of Human Services. I'm the Child Care Refugee Program Manager.
And we do all of our work together.
We do.
We do, yes.
Very close.
So when Jada told us that we would be presenting on all things child care to the Early Learning Council, my mind just started racing with, how we could describe all the work that we do with a vision for the future in less than an hour, without overwhelming you with data and statistics, and we have 85 people who are doing this work in-house, and we have a regulatory system that licenses 4,500 facilities with a diverse staff that speaks a dozen languages. We conduct background checks for we have 50,000 individuals in our background registry, and we provide child care subsidies for up to 18,000 children in any given moment in time. We support over 20,000 early childhood care and education professionals with training. We provide in 5 languages across the state, and through the Child Care Resource and Referral Programs and contracts with Portland State and OSU and Western Oregon, community colleges and nonprofit organizations. And this industry has an economic impact in Oregon that supports over 180,000 jobs with $25 billion in sales annually. So we have a big chunk of work, but we're not going to give you any more statistics like that. We're going to try and explain kind of on a high level snapshot of our work, our current work, and some snippets of vision for the future. This work is under your purview, and we're really excited that the time is right for you to really start looking. The hubs are up, you got that work done, and it's time to kind of move forward into some more of the nitty. Well, you're close, okay. We're getting there. to get into some of this. We really want this to be interactive. Between Rhonda and Dawn and I, we could talk your ear off. So feel free to raise your hand, stand up, get our attention if you want clarification. And we're also going to invite you to, did you hand them out?
Yeah, I think I was.
So you have in front of you a picture. The Office of Child Care, Federal Office of Child Care, has what we call in-house the Federal House. And we're going to talk a little bit about how the council goals align with the federal outcomes that the Office of Child Care has. But as we're going through this presentation, we're going to be going through the rooms of the House to talk about a few things. We want you to just jot down some notes about what you want to hear more about, what intrigues you, where you want clarification. And in the end of the session, we're going to have you kind of break up into just little teams to discuss briefly, you know, what were the highlights for you and what you want to hear more about in the future. So let's go. Next slide. Oh, I'm doing the slide. Okay, professional here.
Or I'll do the slide.
Okay, it doesn't work. So, where are the children? This data is based on some work that Bobby did for us a while back, and really looking at children under 4. And as you can see by the slide, under 5, about 43% of the children are with their parents, they're home. 27% are in some type of early learning development program, which is our work. And another 30% are in some type of informal care. Next slide. So, we have the Child Care and Development Fund, which we'll look at the next slide, really pays for a lot of the work we do in that 27%, supporting the licensing systems. But the biggest piece of it pays for working with kids, actually providing subsidies to working families for children. And in your packet, we have the statistics backwards, so I want to point out that of the 6.5% of the children who are served in some type of a subsidy setting, that 56% of those are in licensed care, and then the 44% are in some type of license-exempt home or relative care informal setting.
So I'm going to take a pause right there so that we can have this be a dialogue, and I'll keep us on schedule. But Eva, you had a question.
I just wanted a quick clarification. Thank you, Chair. For early learning development programs, you're saying that's the licensed program, or does that include the license exempt that are in?
It only includes programs that are licensed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
the informal care, the 30% are the license exempt homes and relative care, part of the subsidy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. So the funding, we know where the children are. Where is the money? We get about $135 million in a biennium from the federal government in our Child Care and Development Fund. 81% of that funding goes to pay for child care subsidies. The rest of the funding supports licensing, child care resource and referral, training, professional development, and then there are targeted funds that go for quality improvement for infants and toddlers, school-age care, and what else? It pays for a lot. So if we want to look at subsidy by type of care, and you have some backup documentation that kind of talks about the general characteristics of child care, very high level, but of the license exempt, we have about 39% of the children who are on subsidy. So we're just looking at that 6% now. 39% of the children are in some type of license exempt care, and an additional 6% of those children are in license exempt care, but they've gone through some additional training. So they're in what we call an enhanced rate. They're at an enhanced rate. They've done some training that is similar to a registration, the registered family child care. And then the rest of the children are in a mix of licensed settings, including centers of family child care homes and certified family child care homes. Okay. So now we're going to show you a little video that we really enjoy. Well, we enjoy it. It really talks a lot about what your work is and kind of helps frame the rest of the conversation as we move forward. And it's from our friends at the Ounce of Prevention, who we've done a lot of work with.
That's me at 4 months old. I'm one of the thousands of little miracles born into poverty every day. That's my mom. She's 17 and never finished high school. She's got some big dreams for me, but she's alone and she's scared. This is my first birthday. That's my grandma, my cousin Tanya, and my boyfriend Kevin. We all live together. It's cold and crowded. I hope we move soon. I don't like Kevin. He's always yelling. This is my second birthday. We're all at daycare, strapped in watching TV again. I wish I could just run around. This is my third birthday. My brother William's taking care of me while my mom sleeps. She works the night shift, so we can't turn up the TV, but we get to go to bed whenever we want. This is my fourth birthday. We're sleeping at my aunt's this month. I don't know when my dad's coming home, but I'm hungry and I miss him. This is my fifth birthday. This is my first day of kindergarten. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I'm unprepared because I didn't get the right start. I'm twice as likely to be in special education. 30% more likely to never go to college. 70% more likely to be arrested for a violent crime. Become a teen parent. Drop out of school. Never hold a job. Spend the rest of my life in poverty. My mom plays with me all the time. She smiles a lot now, and she knows she's not alone anymore. Grandma, Tanya, and Kevin read me a story every night before I go to bed. I go to my school every day, where I get to run and play and see all my new friends. Will and I go to preschool together. Today we learned about dinosaurs and played a counting game. Every morning, my dad and I brush our teeth and eat breakfast together. We have our own place now, and I know we'll always be together. This is my first day of kindergarten. I'm rested, I'm eager, I'm confident, I'm curious, I'm prepared. I'm ready. I am your future. Change the first 5 years, and you change everything. Anyone interested in investing?
Forgot to bring tissues up for us. Yes.
Can I comment? You are going to get the outcomes, I suppose. And why is Oregon 50th in the U.S. on achievement gap for minorities? So, I mean, it's great to hear about the journey, but I'd like to hear about the destination and how we're going to improve things.
So I think in response somewhat to that is that when I watch that video, it's always the hardest to come after that, is when I think about what children's need in order to be successful is they can't be strapped in a car seat watching TV all day. They need their families to know what, where they're at. The stresses of these young parents are so overwhelming, and it's not that they don't care about their children. We all know this, but the resources and the tools that they have at their disposal to give their child not just the opportunity to be healthy and safe, but to thrive. And I think that's the work that as we move forward, that's what's going to produce the outcomes for children. I think we have so many families out there that and this is why we're here talking about it, that's really the role of making sure that we do get those outcomes. That without that, we won't achieve outcomes if there's not those healthy and safe and those enriching, optimal environments to really help children and families reach their potential. And I think the reason we showed this was not just to create a sad story, but to show, I think, the potential of moving forward, and that it really does illustrate what is faced every day out in the field to make sure that there's a level of quality out there that children deserve. And so with that, Kelly's...
Excuse me, though,
Yes.
you still haven't addressed, though, why are we the worst in the nation?
And I want to just, in perspective, part of what we want to be able to do today is look at a very tiny slice of your work. You guys have big work. We are at Office of Child Care. We try and help create environments that keep kids healthy and safe, and do those things that we know contribute to the outcomes that you're looking for. So I don't know that we have the answer. Sometimes I think that, think globally, act locally, that we have this one piece of the world where we have funding and influence that will help contribute to the outcomes you're talking about. And I hope that we're going to be able to draw some of those lines as we go through.
So it may be a helpful frame, and I think this may get to your question, is I think we want to complete going through this because I think this is exciting work. I think at the end of the day, there are X number of children in Oregon who need access to quality daycare to arrive in kindergarten ready to learn.
Absolutely.
And the metrics of that and the mechanics of that is where our work began in terms of the number of children. We think it's somewhere around 103,000 every year who need to get a different intervention, or they're going to continue to be to not be engaged in the economy successfully. So that's the piece where I want us to end at the end of your presentation, is how many kids, how much money, how much are we spending right now, what are we getting? And if we don't have that, I think that's the piece we'll want to come back to, because to get to where Dick is wanting us to go, we have to know the mechanics of that.
Absolutely, and that's why we've given you the opportunity, jot that down, make sure we have that on our way out, so that as we move forward to council meetings in the future, we can prepare more information.
Okay, great. So
yes,
Bobby.
So if we go back to that graphic that we all just were looking at, this is what we're looking at now is that small piece of the graphic that is what the state does. We're not going to move Oregon off of the 50th position just with what this does. That's what we're trying to portray in the graphic, is that we, the council, have to mobilize families, communities, but what I think the lens through which I want to look and listen to this is, it's essential that this piece that the public does for early care and education is strong and solid. And as we move more children into this system, it's ready. It's got the capacity that the way we're doing things is efficient and sustainable and produces positive outcomes. So that's the lens through which I think, but it's a piece.
Got it.
And I think the council's responsible for making that mobile, making that mobile hang in some kind of balance.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And I think, too, you have the whole piece of the pie. The funding and the work we do can influence part of it. Or you have the whole pie.
Right.
So we have pieces.
Thank you.
Let me just say, though, that what's the language, or what the communication's not being told, is what the cost is by not doing something. And so, instead of whining and whimpering about where we are and everything, which I just was, because it does piss me off. Excuse my language. But there's a cost that we're not communicating to the whole community as a whole to support the change, or else we're going to be sitting stuck. And your situation, where the bailiwick that you're in, is going to be the same. And that's And we're not talking about widgets here, right? We're talking about individuals that we just saw in the last movie.
Okay, the Federal House. I think several of us have a copy of this kind of hanging in our cubes so that as we're, talking to people and writing things, that it's always good reference material. And what I love about this, and I'm trying to think of when did this come out? When did the Office of Child Care, Federal Office of
Just a couple years ago, I have to look back to Paul, right before I started.
About 3 years.
Right.
Okay.
So, the primary outcomes for the Child Care and Development Fund from the Office of Child Care are access to quality care that supports employment and family stability. And you'll start to hear, go ahead to the next slide, where does that fit in with the council goals? Children raised in stable and attached families. The next one is healthy, happy, competent children who are ready to learn, ready for school. That's children ready for kindergarten and reading at the grade level at 3rd grade. And the last one is the high-functioning CCDF grantees that use program dollars effectively, similar to what you're talking about, efficiently, with integrity, and benefit eligible children and families. And so this is part of the integrated resources that are used for statewide services that can contribute to the council goal. As we go through the rooms of the House, so we're all going to take a piece. So what's the next slide? The number one priority for us in the Office of Child Care, particularly in our licensing area, is assuring that children are in the safest and healthiest possible environments allowed, or that are possible under law. We have an amazing staff who do background checks and a great partnership with DHS Child Welfare, where we do a really thorough background check of all child care workers in centers and child care homes and anyone who will have access to children. We include background check in the sex offender registry and really use best practices for doing our background checks. And we also have around 60,000 individuals in our registry on the Office of Child Care side, and we do a quarterly scan to make sure that as we're moving forward that children are working with good people. The proposed rules for the Office of Child Care for the Child Care and Development Fund will add an additional requirement for fingerprinting of all children, so that will then be a national background check on everyone. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Licensing. What you have in your packet is just some basic information on how often our facilities are inspected. Oftentimes when people talk about, well, why do you need to do that? And I think, well, how often are restaurants inspected? And we're talking about children here. So I think that inspection is really important. That's another one of the new rules that's coming from the federal office, is that any child who is in a home that, or in any kind of facility that receives subsidy money will have to have some kind of inspection and monitoring.
The second room of the House is really looking at how do we increase the number of children, especially those children receiving subsidy, who are served in high quality care. And so when you look at the House, and you have the full House in your packet as well, I believe, you can really look at what that means is that establishment of something that identifies quality, and that's our quality rating improvement system. And so having those quality standards that connect to not just at the program level, but also the workforce in terms of what we want the educators to be able to know and do, and ultimately to the child outcomes of what we need children to be able to know and do to be ready for kindergarten, is really that framework of quality standards that the QRIS provides. What we know is that these small businesses, we reference back to Bobby, I'm glad Bobby went first actually, it works well, of that affordability of these small businesses is what are those supports? They have a variety of education levels. They come in, it's a low-paying women's profession primarily, and how do we build that up? And what are those supports? So the QRIS is really that state frame to build those qualities, build those supports. I think that there's a story I just literally heard today by one of our licensing specialists that I think illustrates what the QRIS is doing for these small businesses out in the communities. This is a Latino provider in the Salem area. She has had some compliance issues, but she really is trying to do good work, and she has now gotten engaged in the QRIS. She is a provider who typically take children with disabilities as well as DHS families, children receiving subsidies. And she says, I finally have what I need to help know what I need to do best for these kids. And she goes, I know I'm not a 5-star yet, I know I'm not a 4-star, but I'm going to be the best darn 3-star there is out there. And so she sees this really as her way to make sure that she's meeting the needs of those children and families. And so I think it just really speaks to what this is doing out there in the field. I think in order, though, however, to really meet this goal, we need to build that supply of high quality care out within the communities where the children that we're targeting are at. And so that as we've been building the system and moving forward, we've just launched, and I believe it's on your funding sheets as well, focused childcare networks out to the 6 existing early learning hubs that are really meant and targeted to provide, to help build the supply within those communities where those children are at, to have access to high quality care and education. One of the premises around that is we know how parents make childcare choices: price, location, and common value system. So they're not going to go across town. We need to meet children and families where they're at. What we also know is if they're in a community that has socioeconomic issues, other risk factors, they might need extra support. So these facilities are receiving double funding to help support them in their quality improvement, to ensure that, as well as real direct coaching and creating really a peer group of a network within their communities of childcare providers that they can speak to. And so those will just be starting up this summer with recruitment within the hub's targeted communities. Rhonda's going to talk a little bit later about some more concentrated efforts that connect to this goal, because as we know, things kind of are cross-cutting across. But I wanted to share with you kind of the first, one of the key strategies that we're rolling out of, while we need the state system, how we can really target that to really ensure that the children receiving subsidies are having access to high-quality care. Just to kind of touch on what that role in connection to licensing is when we think about the licensing standards, we've talked a lot about that those are foundational, and then we build quality from there. The licensing specialists play a role throughout this. They are truly the feet on the ground, the eyes in the field that can look and maintain it. Are these real serious compliance, health and safety issues being met out in the field? And that's why these are weaved throughout. And so they're really an integral part as we move forward to ensure that as quality is achieved, that it's maintained.
So this kind of shows what's going to happen with the new proposed rules from the Office of Child Care. So with proposed rules, there's going to be higher standards for monitoring for license exempt programs. So we will do a pre-service inspection just to make sure. Currently, we have them do a checklist, self-certification checklist that they meet all the safety requirements. And then we also have recently implemented online health and safety course, just, safety in the home for a child care provider. But there will be an on-site inspection with the new rules. The proposed rules include an area of improving health and safety, which is the pre-service inspection and continual monitoring. Also establishing family-friendly policies, which we're already trying to do with our DHS folks. And one of those is to ensure that they have a 12-month eligibility. Continuity of care is really important to us, and Rhonda will talk a little bit about our contracted slots, but having that secure place focused on the child for a minimum period of a year is really critical. Improving the quality of child care through QRIS and licensing. And the last piece of the federal rules is going to be about strengthening program integrity. So it's really looking and making sure that our error rates and all of those things. I really feel that we have pretty good program integrity, but Agda and Paul will speak to that, I guess, in our findings after this visit. Yeah, it's true?
Yes.
Okay. And so Agda is the program manager for Office of Child Care, responsible for Oregon, Idaho, and 20-some tribes in that area. And she listens to all of our Early Learning Council meetings online. And she also listens to all of our Early Childhood Care and Education Coordinating Council meetings. So she really has an intimate knowledge of what we're doing here in Oregon and how the Child Care and Development Fund fits into it all. So, actually, we'd like Agda to say just a few words.
Before
Yes,
Agda
please.
begins,
Yeah.
Bobby?
It just, whenever I see license exempt programs there, people tend to think we're talking about that whole big group of programs. We're only talking about that small percentage who receive subsidy dollars. We're not going to.
Like 44% of the 6%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify, because that would be a big deal if Oregon was really reaching out to all license exempt, but we're following the dollars.
License exempt home and
Thank
relative
you.
care receiving subsidies or accepting subsidy payments for parents.
Thank you for the clarification.
That's
important.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's our world, right? It
is.
Yeah. Okay, so the next goal in the House is build pathways to effective practice and professional development. Agda's background is with the Association for the Education of Young Children, among other things. And so we'd really just like you to say a few words of what was behind this goal and then kind of how Oregon fits in nationally.
Well, it's this goal is really based on the some of the research that tells us that one of the biggest indicators of the quality is the staff and the staff interactions with the children. And so that's why it's so important to target this particular goal, and of course then link that to the quality in the QRIS. But for this goal in particular, it's of course very important to look at the existing workforce, you know, often with limited education and limited pay, and really to look at then how can you successfully build these pathways. And this is something that Oregon has done successfully and continues to be re-evaluating, is how can they help people who, even people who may not have a GED or who are just getting their GED or just have their high school diploma, to get the Child Development Foundation and continue their education to be more effective with the caregivers, to get the kind of outcomes that you were talking about, Dick. And so Oregon does do that well. I also want to commend the team for taking advantage of the technical assistance that we offer to states. And not all states are able to take advantage of that, and Oregon really has. And that's, and professional development is one of those areas, and so is licensing. And we've seen great strides. We also regularly, Paul and I, recommend Oregon to do presentations on the national level for other states to see what you're doing in terms of your professional development pathways, your contracted slots in childcare, your partnerships with Head Start and childcare, the equity lens. So a lot of your work that other states are really looking to you for.
Thanks.
Thanks. And so when we think about I really like what you said in terms of it's the teachers that make the difference in the outcomes for children, that as we look at the governor's 40-40-20 goal and we really think about a lot of the work going on through Oregon Education Investment Board, the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, we have some real momentum in the state to really make sure that early learning is at the table. And I think that that's work. I often think of Krista Shively as she was talking about there's a train, you know, when something's moving, it's easier to adjust the course and make sure that it fits what our needs are for our diverse workforce. And I'm hoping that we can move forward and get some support and backing from the council to help in that big policy area to really make sure that we are meeting the needs of this diverse workforce to help them in both the middle 40 and the upper 40. I wanted just to highlight a couple innovative approaches that are going on in order to really look at the middle 40 particularly, is because of Race to the Top, we've been able to just launch a supplemental scholarship program, and that really is actually leveraging a lot of the long-term resources that the Oregon Community Foundation has offered up through their scholarship program. And in essence, this is designed to pay for those other things that traditional scholarships don't don't cover. Whether it's the math class to get your degree, sometimes that is a barrier. And so we're offering actually staff from the early learning division to really serve as those navigators to help those professionals get those degrees. And that is the absolute goal at the end of the day, is where are they at, what do they need, what are the supports, how can we access them to the resources, and where do we need to pick up, whether it's the books, whether it's some indirect costs of gas to get to class. These are all barriers that we haven't had some supports, and so we're really excited to get this launched. Applications are due August 1st, so we'll see how many we get in the door. Additionally, we also are working with the Community College Workforce Development to work on a one-year certificate. So again, creating those pathways so that credits are, they build towards something versus vocational degrees, the technical, and so that's work I think that particularly with OEIB, that is a state effort that we need to be behind. We also are working within a community college to really serve dual language learners. And so using an IBEST model, for those of you familiar, the VESSEL program, which is really teaching early childhood content while the Spanish-speaking providers are learning English. So that's helping to build that capacity both in their content in early learning, but also in their proficiency in English to help them be able to complete degree in college. And so I think those are some real promising practices, and would definitely look forward to coming back when we have some results and data from those efforts as we move forward. So I think with that, I think it's time to take a little deeper dive into the subsidy, which is the bulk of these dollars that go out.
It is.
I have a question about professional development. Mostly kind of wanted to put it out here for this group, because you guys already know this. Oh. But you know that a lot of the providers, especially the in-home providers, are 24/7. And so accessing the professional development that might be available to them is difficult because they don't necessarily have access to subs or can pay for a sub. Are we looking at programs to help them have a substitute or pay for a substitute that so they can access the professional development too?
Yeah, actually, there's a couple fronts of work that's going on. There is work at exploring and looking at online degrees and how that can really support working families. Most of the initiatives, actually, Bobby and Kim are going to be referencing, that is really targeted at those non-traditional working students to help support them. But in terms of funds, the scholarship is really meant that there is some indirect funds that the student can achieve to be used how they need. So if they need some substitute, well, that's what they need, and they could choose to use those dollars that way. So it really is meant to be as flexible to meet the needs of them in order to achieve a degree.
Yes, go ahead.
I was wondering too, and I think we kind of briefly talked about this in some other meeting, like dreaming big. Like what would it look like to have a substitute pool for childcare too? So I'm just gonna throw that out there for later.
And you know, there's been actually a fair amount of national work, and even in the last couple of weeks, through other states have thrown out and asked questions about that, the CCDF administrators, and it's one of those things that people have tried, and it's very difficult. Yeah, it needs a real champion and some funding.
Yeah, I know that it's even been tried here at some point, but
20-some years ago. Yeah, I remember trying it. Yeah.
You build a pool, but when it comes right down to it, the providers are not going to leave their children with somebody they don't know. The children don't know. And it's there's really good reasons that this is challenging.
Right, absolutely. I'm just trying.
They're not being, obstinate. It's really hard.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, great. So the goal for the subsidy program is to be child-focused, family-friendly, and fair to providers. And as we work on policy changes, that's always kind of the front and center thing that we think. Yes, the thing we think about. ERDC has a dual purpose, and that is to promote family self-sufficiency and also foster healthy child development and school success. And this does align with the council's goals of stable and attached families and children ready for school. We work with partners that help families access quality childcare, and we also, our partners also help increase the number of childcare providers that are available. Most of our ERDC parents are single moms, and as Bobby's research shows, they tend to go from one low-paying job to another.
So,
They also have many.
so did you said the goal is stable and attached families, correct? You said most of the moms are not, correct? So, like, what does that mean? Yeah.
So what that means is, that's one reason why we have our contracted slots and protected eligibility. And the feds are also making, and I'll talk about that in just a second.
Okay.
There's some policy changes we have in mind to hopefully help that. So there is more stability and continuity of care.
Yeah, and I think the council's goal, stable and attached families, and what we want to try and do through policy is show how we're supporting that goal through some of the changes that we're making in our contracted slots program that provide for more stability for the child,
So
which then in turn helps the parents.
I guess my confusion is if the reality is that they're, well, so there are a couple assumptions. So the assumption would be that if you're not attached, that there's instability. So if the data and the research is saying that that's not what we have, is there data and research that says we're gonna change that? Like, or we have the ability to change that? Because if we don't, then why not focus more on sort of the things we can impact than the things we can't?
I would say that, I mean, again, this is the council's goal. So the work that we're really attempting to do is to provide stability where we have some influence. And that is with the child in a stable continuity of care environment.
But you're
So
also
high
talking about
quality.
work schedules.
Yes.
You're not necessarily talking about instability of moms per se. It's more in terms of that work-family
But can we
life
still
balance.
impact someone's work schedule?
What we can do is support children during that work time, weekends, care, and things like that, that they're in quality environments. No, we can't change their work schedules.
I'd like to just make a point here that I think ties to what Charles is asking. First, I want to acknowledge that it's very critical, and it's a little bit about the leveraging activity we talked about earlier, that we have DHS at the table for this discussion, because part of what we need is all the stakeholders driving to a common result. That being said, I think to Charles's point is, and I think we're going to have this discussion, is without any of these goals having any numbers, they're not goals, they're dreams. And I think specifically to the point Charles is raising, in order to move the needle on interventions that will successfully take mothers at risk and convert them into a stable families model, we have to know what evidence-based practices will get us there, how much money are we deploying to use them, when do we expect to get that result? And so I think that's the piece that we're going to bring to this discussion once we've gotten through, because a goal without a number is really just a dream. It's aspirational, it's noble, but it's not concrete, and we won't attain it without both the number that we're trying to move, the dollars we're going to invest to move it, and the deadline for getting that progress made, particularly with overrepresented populations, because we know from our experience in Oregon that we have to change and shift how we're doing that work if we expect to reverse the path we're currently on.
So part of why I asked that, 2 days ago, we had a staff meeting, and we have a mom right now who's sending her kid to Montessori, and I guess, and from what was said, the child care payment doesn't cover the the Montessori doesn't have daycare before school starts. And so this mom and her family are scrunching their dollars together to pay for Montessori, but there isn't the support there, right? And so part of me asking that question is sort of trying to get an understanding about just, on the ground, how does it all work, right? Like if we have this goal, the reality is it's not work. People are coming from dynamic relationships and all that good stuff. How are we adjusting, and how are we being fluid to sort of make sure we drive what's best for the kid?
And one thing, and I think you were there, we had some, DHS has held some community forums, and there were several in Portland, African American forums, and that, I think one thing we can really do is engage communities and listen to folks and hear from them what's working and what's not working. And when I was at one of those forums, I did hear from parents, and they were saying, you know, parents in my neighborhood, they don't know about employment-related daycare program. They have inaccurate information. And so one thing we've tried to really do is do more outreach, parent and provider education, I think, is really important. One thing that the agency is doing is our local diversity and equity committees are working with our local DHS leadership, and statewide they're going to be holding community forums, and some of them have already had those, but there's a real push to do that. I think in order to provide equitable services, we really need to hear from folks what's working and what's not working. And it's not just in Portland, it's in rural areas too. It's across the state, because we have really diverse needs in this state. One thing we're really excited about is working with the early learning hubs and, you know, wanting to make our system navigation easier. And we've been working with Megan Irwin and Denise Swanson, and, you know, we're just really excited about the work. Another thing is, I think by working with the early learning hubs, we can get more kids in quality care. And again, it's hearing from the communities what they need and, you know, kind of coming up with a plan of action. Now, there's other ways that we hope to support our families, and these are key provisions of the new federal proposed rule. And the first one is to establish a 12-month eligibility redetermination, and this would really reduce the burden on families and also the cliff effect, which we've been hearing a lot about lately. We hope to reduce or waive co-payments for families, because we have heard in some of Bobby's studies again that she's done that just the co-pays were high, families couldn't afford them, or they changed frequently, and so that would be another good thing. And then last is equipping parents with better information. We want to make sure that, you know, that consumer education is available so parents really understand the importance of high quality child care.
Should I add something, Rhonda?
Yes.
Sure, because I think this kind of gets at what you were asking about. Charles is a great example we heard yesterday when we were at the Child Care Center. And it's a great example of a policy change you've had here in Oregon that's providing stability for the child in child care, particularly in a time of stress in the family. So we heard this story of a family that was at this Child Care Center that we were at. That's an Oregon Program of Quality, a really high quality program, and the mom lost her job, and she was in tears because besides losing her job, she thought she wasn't going to be able to bring her child to this loving, caring, high quality child care center anymore. But because she had this contracted slot, that she was eligible to keep her child there for a long period of time, that she was able to keep her child there while she was looking for work, and I'm sure that helped her to find a new job. And her child was cared by the same caregivers while the mom was looking. And then she was able to get a job and then, you know, still have her child there. Whereas if she had pulled her child out, it was such a good program that they would have filled the slot with another child, and then they would have had to go find childcare somewhere else. So the policy that you have in place in Oregon really supported this family and this child having continuity of care during that stressful time.
Terry.
I want to go back to what Charles was saying, because I think something that concerns me is we are really promoting these early learning programs that are receiving funding through the state and federal, who are built on the school year. I watch families every day struggle with childcare the other 3 months of the year because families do not operate on a school year basis. And so in my community, early Head Start, all those programs operate on a school year basis. So some of the families that are least able to manage to find alternate care in the summer are having to scramble to find. Is this kind of what you're referring to, Charles? The programs are not fitting the needs of the families. They start at 8 o'clock. Most parents are not going to work at 8 o'clock. I mean, I think we really need to start looking at, are we serving the needs of the family, or are we still expecting families to fit into our model? The model that fits the middle income, well-established family with a lot of supports, because that's the model that's out there, but we're still expecting families who don't have that level of support to go out and fit their square peg into our round hole. And I think that's really something we're really going to have to examine.
Thank you. I want to go to Eva's question, and then I'm going to parking lot these issues that we've identified in my count here. I have
down on your
3.
house.
Yeah, I hope you're all taking notes. But Eva, let's go to you, and then we'll come back to
this. This is like, because I was going to follow up. There is an answer. We have in-home providers that provide that wraparound care and the transportation and everything too. So let's talk about how we help families get access to them and help build those sorts of businesses too. And then I was going to ask about the contracted slots, because we only have a very small number of those. And yesterday I heard that there is another center that has been trying very hard to fill their contracted slot, but they operate the 9 to 5 or the 7:30 to 6:30 or whatever it is. And I think a lot of families that need that stability can't access that because that's not the hours that they work. So can we get contracted slots, or can we get that full year eligibility for everybody?
So I would just say, this is great. Lots of continued conversation, but that we don't want to completely, we license like over 1,000 centers in the state and over 2,500 family child care providers. All of them have these long hours. Centers are open at 6:30 or 7. So the Head Starts and those are one set, and then the child care providers are another. So as we move along and as we do other presentations, we can really present a clear picture of that. Yeah. And I think that this is complicated for any family. I mean, I had my mother caring for my child, and it was still complicated. So.
Right. So now I'm going to talk just a little bit about some of the improvements we've made, and just to kind of, Agda had mentioned protected eligibility for job loss with the contracts. But for our ERDC program, and let's say the parent isn't in a contracted slot, we did increase our allowed time for job search to 2 months. And so I think that's going to really be beneficial to families. Some other good things that have happened, in 2013, we increased our subsidy rates, and that was part of the collective bargaining process with AFSCME and SEIU. And another thing, we heard from AFSCME providers and then also center directors about problems with the infant age alignment between the Office of Child Care and DHS policy. So that was another change that we made. And again, kind of hearing from folks what was and wasn't working, and making that change. Another thing we've been working on is partnering with other DHS programs, child welfare and TANF. Many of our families move from one program to another, and really kind of thinking about how we can provide continuity of care for those families. 27% of our families on the employment-related daycare program caseload right now have just transitioned from the temporary assistance for needy families program. 97% are on the supplemental nutrition assistance program, SNAP. And so, these families, they have a lot going on, and again, whatever we can do to support them. We have a lot of work to do, and we know that. And, I think discussions like these are going to be really helpful. We've been collaborating with the Early Learning Division to align statewide child care standards and policies. And I had mentioned before, just thinking of ways how we can partner with the early learning hubs. And we've expanded the contracted child care slots. So I want to talk a little bit about the contracts. DHS has been providing subsidy childcare slots since 2000, and this is through an innovative partnership that we've had with Head Start. We currently have 7 Head Start programs we contract with, and we have just over 200 children in contracted care.
And that's full year, full day programs.
Right, full day, full year. Protected eligibility. DHS began a 3-year field test in 2012 with Oregon Programs of Quality, and we have 16 programs that are serving over 70 children right now in that program, and that serves children 0 to 6. And we are having an evaluation study completed by OSU for the field test. And I just want to say this piece of work with the contracts, we just had a wonderful collaboration with Office of Child Care. Kelly, Dawn, and others, and Bobby was involved in we had some really good policy discussions. So the goals of the contracted child care program are that children have access to continuous high-quality child care. Families have continuity of child care to support their employment, and providers have stable funding. Our children in the contracted slots have protected eligibility with a family copay of $27 every month. And for some families, we've heard from them, this is a huge, huge asset for them, because normally their copay might be a lot higher, and you know, we hear from them that they're in this high quality program, their kids are happy, and then they don't have to worry about that high copayment anymore. The child is also given priority for a contracted slot the following year. And so this really is a win-win-win for children, families, and providers. Now again, not everybody is going to fit into our current contracts, but I think we have opportunities to improve them, and you know, just hearing from all of you, giving us ideas, and then we'll do some more brainstorming and probably change some more policy.
Well, and as we increase numbers of providers who are coming onto the QRIS, we're moving the contracted slots from the OPQ, the old programs of quality, to the quality rating and improvement system, and so we'll be able to expand.
Right. Yeah. And we're also, I think Dawn had mentioned, we're going to expand the contracts to the focused child care networks. I think there's a lot of opportunities with that too. And then the early Head Start Child Care Partnership grants. And we hope to contract with the child care providers that are working with the early Head Start Child Care Partnership grantee. So again, real exciting. Okay, so.
Yes, Norm?
I heard the number 70, and I realize this is more or less a pilot. Is that
right? Right.
So in the context of the thousands of families and children who have need for this kind of full-time commitment, this contracted opportunity, I mean, it seems like an incredibly small number.
It is. And again, it was a field test, and there were times where we were glad it was small because there's some lessons learned, and we wanted to do it right. I mean, we had some really tough policy discussions. And, you know, moving forward, I think the lessons we've learned, we'll be able to roll it out and expand, and we'll be more successful.
So there's a reasonable expectation you can take this to scale once you have those things figured out?
Yes.
Well, maybe a couple examples of your lessons.
Yeah.
So there's additional 200 children that we're serving through the partnership with Head Start. So
right.
70 is tiny, 270 is, you know, not huge.
A little bit better.
But for a pilot, we're getting a lot of information, and we're changing systems from our OPQ to QRIS. So.
Right.
But the universe, I mean, 270 is still
small.
It is small.
Tiny.
Mm-hmm. It is small.
I want to, I have that on my parking lot list, and we're going to come back to it. Dick?
Well, part of the answer, of course, is jobs. And it wasn't very enheartening to see a map of the United States, and we're the only one on this map that says that we've got more people. What does it say? Is that the audit released this month, and you're going to reporting that we have less people looking for jobs than any other person, or any other, you probably saw that, right? So I guess what I'm really trying to say is we've got a symptom here to do less people. If we had more people working, we wouldn't have to address that bigger. So, you know, so we got to look at the whole problem or the whole solution. And another thing too is to make sure that we're not top down, that we're going from bottom up to do. And I really appreciate you going around listening to the group, so you at least get the people who were involved instead of this we've got the answer type thing.
Well, and also I think cost. Something I tend to hear a whole lot about is cost and sort of the affordability of it. I don't know how we have any role, any engagement in that, but I think that's also an extremely critical thing.
Okay, I know that we're going to adjourn this part of the meeting at 11:15, and so my goal is for you to give you guys a few minutes to wrap up so that we can have the conversation part, because otherwise we're going to creep into that, and I do want to get to the parking lot issues.
Right. So just real quick, the Early Learning Division and DHS is also exploring a tiered reimbursement system. And so this would be based on providers achieving a star rating on the Quality Rating Improvement System. So aligning payment policies with quality systems to ensure our highest risk children are served in quality learning environments. So just real quick, we're looking at doing monthly bonuses. So these would be available to children that are in a 3, 4, or 5-star facility. And after working with the Early Learning Hub in their area, 4- and 5-star programs would have the option of choosing a contracted slot instead of a bonus. We're also going to focus on equity and building culturally specific care. High-need focus areas would receive special bonuses. These focus areas would move toward the QRIS commitment to quality and become star rated. We're also looking at a QRIS copay incentive. So a reduced copay that if the provider selected, or if the parent selected a provider that was star rated, they would be able to be eligible for that. We also have some other real exciting activities that we're involved in. The first one is a budget note, and that required the Early Learning Division and Department of Human Services to develop policy recommendations on how to modify the ERDC program to provide child care subsidies to working parents enrolled in higher education. So we had a group of stakeholders that met several times in a really short period of time, and it included representatives from higher education, state agencies, nonprofits, unions, the Speaker's Office. Bobby Weber and Eva Ripito were on the group. From the Early Learning Council, we were really happy to have you guys participate in that. Recommendations were presented to the E-Board in May, and they asked that we come back with a more detailed process outline. So we're going to be working fast and furious to do that, and we'll be presenting back at the Emergency Board in September. We also, part of House Bill 2013, required the Early Learning Division and Department of Human Services to convene a professional development and quality improvement committee, and this is for our license exempt home and relative care providers that are receiving subsidy. So we have a charter that we've completed, and we're going to be reviewing evidence-based approaches to improving quality, as well as a list of other things that I won't go through today. And then last, I wanted to mention, we're very pleased that Speaker Kotek has convened an ERDC work group, and we're discussing ways to strengthen the effectiveness of the program. And the group includes Representative Vega Pedersen, Senator Hayward Steiner, Bobby Weber and Eva Ripito are also on that group, as well as other union representatives and state folks. So there's a lot going on. It's a real exciting time.
Thank you. Any other comments before we move to the conversation part, or? Okay.
For the conversation.
Yeah,
great. I would like to say that, propose to the council, first of all, I think we're a lively group, and our best conversations are as a unit as opposed to breaking down into small groups. I think we can save ourselves some time. And I would propose that we identify the parking lot issues that we'd like to spend our 30 minutes talking about. I have a list, a summary, a draft for your consideration that we can use. If I've hit it wrong, I know I'll hear from you. So, does that work for you all?
It's great.
Great. The parking lot issues that I have so far are to Dick's point, the question of when does this become an action plan for results and metrics that will tell us how many kids need what, when, how we're going to get them what they need, and when we're going to see those results. So that was my first issue. Second was the Charles issue about the use of subsidies by parents, the flexibility of those dollars, the complexity of those dollars, and how we address that. To Terry's point, the fit to the contemporary world we live in of what we currently have. Are we focused on the school year? Are we focused on year-round? But how good is that fit with what we're investing in to drive to the outcomes we want? And then one that may not be a parking lot issue, but you may all totally understand it. I don't know what the issue is around infant age alignment. So if that's a parking lot issue, I need someone to clarify that for me.
That one's actually really pretty easy because with the licensing rules, you're an infant up until you're 2. But with DHS, you were only an infant till 1.5, and it just confused everybody.
Yeah.
So we fixed it.
So
it
it's
was a simple fix.
So now, how old are you when you were an infant?
Oh, 2. Oh, for funding purposes, up to 2.
Yeah.
Up to or through 2?
Up to.
Up to, got it. Okay, so that one's not a parking lot issue. Are there any other issues that we'd like to frame in our conversation for the next 30 minutes?
The one that underlies and that came up in kind of underneath or directly was the reality of employment for low-wage workers.
Got it.
Schedules.
Well, and also looking at
policies.
cost.
Affordability.
I don't know where I read this or if I even read it or heard it. Oregon's like #1 in childcare costs or something like that. Is it
Not quite. I mean,
affordability?
we're high.
Yeah.
It's when you look at our wages,
Yep.
Charles, that we get into such big trouble. We earn below the median, and our prices are high. So the combination, so affordability is an extremely big issue in Oregon.
I would love to see how the Early Learning Council engages in that conversation.
Okay, so I've got that. Anything else for the parking lot before we begin? Dina?
I just, whether or not it needs to be part of this parking lot conversation, it's certainly on a topic of priority for my work with the health agency. I just want to say, in general, these conversations, appropriately so, really focus on childcare as a really early learning and education and family stability issue. But I just want to make sure that we're adequately thinking and framing it as a health issue as well. These experiences in early life have such a huge impact on health outcomes long term. And I think the health system should and can be an important partner in this work. So just as an example, we saw that video, which I've used a lot. I think clearly there's a lot of health issues that we saw in there that overlap early learning and stability. You know, we see issues related to nutrition there and how those drive behavior early on. And very clearly the impact of social emotional development and those earliest relationships and attachment that really are important for building health and education outcomes. So I think we have a lot of clear opportunities that maybe don't exist elsewhere in the nation that we can build on top of. So it's our joint policy work that we're doing with the Oregon Health Policy Board that we can help to frame and drive some of the opportunities. It's the emerging collaboration that are happening with hubs, CCOs, and the local public health partnerships. And I think there's a lot of professional development work that clearly is happening on the early learning side, and we can really maximize on the health side. The primary care providers serve, I've said before, as a really clear, trusted resource for parents. And it is so common that we get asked questions about where should my child go to childcare. I guarantee that 99% of primary care providers know nothing about QRIS in our state, nothing about those policies, really don't know anything about the resources around ERDC available to families and beyond that. So I just think we have loads of opportunity to even further impact with the opportunities we have in Oregon. So
Thank you. And I just want to take a moment here to encourage council members to speak directly into the microphone. We now have some people on the phone lines, and they're having a hard time. I'm sure they're not having a hard time hearing me, but I think they're having a hard time hearing you. So please speak, pull it close, and use your outside voice. Terry.
To Dana's comment, there's actually staff dedicated to health and childcare at the Oregon Health Authority in the Public Health Division and the maternal child health programs, and I rarely see them engaged here.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that disconnect is happening, but I'd like to see more of that.
Okay.
Lynn, I think that's
Yes.
really an untold story on what the return on investment there. I mean, it's flat, huge, and anybody like myself has heard the whole story is an aha moment on why in the heck we aren't doing it. And I think that there's a real opportunity to communicate with the community as a whole why that what Dana said is important, and it's low fruit.
I'd like to follow up. The model's old, so we'd have to redo it. But it is possible to calculate the cost of what it would take to provide subsidies to those currently eligible. We now serve only less than 20%. I would guess it's around 17% now of the eligible families. But getting to, I'm not sure this is the point you're making, but when you see that it's like 96 or 95% single parents, that's because the program rules do not allow two wage earners to be eligible. So if we were really going to meet the need, we'd have to first serve the people who are eligible. You can cost that out. It's expensive, but you can. We've done it years ago. We could do it again. And the second thing is, to be truly meeting the need, we'd have to pick up those low-wage working families where you've got two minimum wage workers, because life for them is pretty gruesome. And so then we would need to do what you're talking about, Dick, which would be, that's very doable to get that cost figure, and then you'd have to have somebody create a model that says, and we're paying X because we're not doing that. And so those are all doable. I don't know if that's a council job or, where it should be done, but that's very doable. We have the numbers.
It's a whole economic issue, because then you can have that economic model, Econ Northwest, of course, they're the guru of those, and then you plug in unemployment going down. And so you could that would take some of the need off. I mean,
it increases it. It increases it. When these low-wage workers get to work more, they need more childcare.
Okay. Well, see that. Okay.
It goes.
Okay.
Especially if they have to work multiple jobs.
They have an oxymoron. If they don't work, then it's going to be cheaper. That's.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In the short term.
In the very short term.
The short term.
Not much income tax there, though.
So one of the things I want to throw out on the table for your consideration is it's really impossible to solve a problem if you don't have a clear, concise, and really numbers-driven description of the problem. And I see that in this discussion. I hear we have lots of efforts. I hear we have lots of good work going on. I think the QRIS piece is critical, but that essentially scope of problem analysis statement of how many people need quality childcare, how many have access currently, how many are subsidized, what's the correlation to job deployment, what's the correlation to overrepresented populations. We don't have that. And part of my concern is until we have that, we can't measure our performance to that goal. We can't do any financial analysis. And most importantly, we can't change the circumstance.
So that's true. And part of part of my irritation with government is that when we don't have that, the folks who suffer are the people who are already suffering.
Yep.
And then what happens is whenever we do come up with a solution, we hyperimpose that solution on them and blame them, right? And so part of my hope here is a deep recognition of the brokenness within the system and us marshaling whatever resources, whatever attention we have, and moving faster than we probably ever have, because this is a huge, I mean, you know, when I think about folks who I know who struggle between do I work or do I pay for childcare, it's not a good thing.
Right. Yes.
I'm all for childcare, but I had the chance to work with Child Care Resource and Referral and different groups of children. I always had this struggle with families who are not high wage earners, are low wage earners, getting their child to child care, then going to a low paying job, and then coming home late, tired, to pick up their child from child care. And we profess that parents are the first and best teachers of their children, but we're giving more education almost to the child care providers. I've always just wondered why, I know it sounds like welfare, but why don't we just pay parents sometimes to stay home a little longer and become better parents and qualify for higher paying jobs?
Can I get you to talk into the mic? So,
okay, I'm done.
Timing is everything.
Good timing.
Yes, Krista.
Well, and just to add to that too, I mean, I was struck by what you were saying, Janet, that we spend so much time educating and thinking about quality for providers, and also I'm wondering how this connects to education that's available for parents who want to increase their earnings, and then what childcare potentially is available for those parents, and how do our systems support that? I've known of several folks in my life who have been penalized from that, and I know that there are systems in Oregon that are making improvements on that, but I think it's an important conversation that if folks want to get out of impoverished situation, increase their education, to what degree are we supporting that kind of movement?
I don't think people really picked up that the budget note conversation is that students who are employed and going to school can get childcare not just for the employment hours, which is what is current, but for their student hours also. So, I mean, that's
very helpful.
I mean, they had to go through it so fast that I'm not sure people caught. That
thank
directly addresses one of your.
No, and I heard it for a second, so I really appreciate it. Is that actually in process, or is it right now being operationalized?
Rules are in
Planning right now.
Planning.
Right.
And what is the percentage between the amount of time that they have to spend in a working job as opposed to going to school? Because my concern would be that you potentially could have someone who has to work 3 additional jobs to make sure that they can keep the electricity on, as well as going to school. I mean, I'm with the mobile again, and I'm thinking about where everything balances.
I just want to point out that I think that's exactly the point of having a crisp, clear, quantitative statement of problem. We can discuss these issues, we can have new data every year, we can analyze till the cows come home. And if we don't quantify the problem and come up with a financially sustainable action plan, we just will be here 10 years from now having the same conversation. So I'm going to really hold us to that piece, and we're going to talk about where we're going to assign that piece. This council does have the opportunity to provide that statement, or at least to corral the state's resources to define that statement of need.
Can I add just one point of data to that? It would be helpful when we're thinking about that data to consider degree of parents, what kind of educational achievements they've had as a part of the data set. And in addition
I'm going to say we're going to keep this very simple. There will be a lot of parts to it. You'll have direct input and the ability to quantify what you would like included there.
Right.
So I think we'll be able to get that point.
Thank
Eva?
I was going to say on the ERDC, I think federal requirements that it is employment-related daycare. So when we had to construct the recommendations, we had to keep that in mind, that it's based in employment first, and then student hours were second. And then to follow up with that, how much money do we want to spend? Because if we want to spend a lot of money, we can make it an education and employment-related daycare. Because right now, we're spending a lot of money, and there are parents that really want to go to school. And I think it would fit in with our 0 to 20 and beyond and our goals to consider that. But, what's the cost? And,
So these are excellent points, and I'm just going to give Bobby a heads up that I think this is coming back to her committee, not your report, but the project assignment is going to be under your leadership. But I would encourage council members to kind of document all the respective issues you're identifying. It's entirely possible to take those issues and again put them in a quantitative statement of scope of challenge, and identify current resources, identify expected outcomes, and I think that's really critical to this being a results-driven process. Okay, good conversation. We've got 15 more minutes. Keep going.
I need a framework for this conversation because it's been a little ad hoc to this point on a parking lot list, but what was the intention for the conversation? If we're going to break down by twos, we're going to have a whole series of different conversations. What are you trying to achieve now?
My goal is to take, this was supposed to be an educational process for us today to understand this effort. And then, based on the questions that have arisen and based on the fact that we don't have dollars, numbers, and deadlines here, is to create a next step that will produce what we need as a council to know how this work ties to our deliverables to the governor and the legislature of 40-40-20 results.
All right.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, I'm not sure that my thoughts are going to congeal in a 15-minute time slot here. So I don't want to waste this time, but I'm trying to figure out how we'd be productive in this conversation.
And I think my hope is that we will use this time just to kind of get all the issues out there. But my further hope is that we can integrate this to our business plan to produce the outcomes. And so that's part of what I've been struggling with too, Norm, is how do we take all these issues, this discussion, this good work, and tee it up to be results driven. Because I think these two charts are wonderful and very helpful in clarifying. The next step piece is dollars and mechanics. And really critical to being clear to the point you raised at the outset is we're talking about little pieces of the pie. The pie is the problem statement. We're responsible for moving the needle on these things in a very specific time frame, and so we need to get clear on what the numbers and the dollars are that go with the pie and the mobile and the house.
I have to say, Bobby used the word, maybe it was intentional or maybe it was a perfect slip, but when she said we needed to mobilize and the urgency, the urgency in Charles' statement is one I think we've all felt. But I almost like that metaphor, mobilizing. You've got the perfect diagram.
Thank you. Questions from people on the phone?
It's Pam, no questions for me.
Council members, I don't want to prolong this past your interest or your...
Well, I think that this context piece and Norm's, so when we look at all children ready for kindergarten, we've got parents, we've got the early learning providers, and we've got the communities, which we're very much engaged in. You know, it's a community supported by public. And so when we talk about this piece, the child care and early education programs, we're talking about a piece, and it never makes sense. We always get drawn into the bigger piece because it's so we're talking about parents and their education and parents and their parenting skills, but so somehow we have to create the context and then allow ourselves to focus in what does this little piece need and what does this little, you know, and I think that's a challenge because they are all related and they influence one another.
And they are, and I think part of my hope is that we would focus the conversation on things that we can control. and the things that we can influence. Oftentimes, I think part of the breakdown as we talk about people in poverty is we tend to focus on their deficiencies rather than our inability to truly understand the complexities to which they live in. And I think the more we can break those complexities down to bite-sized pieces and be cognizant of the policy implications within those complexities, I think the better off we are at addressing some of the needs.
Thank you, Charles. More comments, discussion? Yes, Jada.
So as you see, I did say this was the first of many discussions. And as you unfold this onion, you see how many moving parts go into the work of the child care subsidy piece, as well as the quality, as well as many of them. And I want to tell you a little story. We're in the process of having an audit by the Secretary of State for a performance audit, and in their very first meeting, one of the things they came in and very boldly said is we're going to address the affordability of childcare. And they were very firm about that they were going to do that in Oregon. And I'm going, you go right ahead on it. And they came back about midway, and they had spent time talking, I know, with the federal government, with many states, and they said, we're going to take that off the audit. So as you know, this is going to be a great continuing discussion, and it's a very important one to be able to address kids ready for kindergarten, and those stats that Dick will always ask is how are we going to begin to move the dial from our early end.
Okay, and since I didn't hear no from Bobby, I'm taking that as a willingness to take this on, certainly with support from other council members in creating that scope of challenge framework and attaching dollars, timelines, and money to it, and demographics to it.
Okay, so this involves creating, a modeling, an economic modeling system of. So I think we can certainly take the lead, but I would assume that there'll be somebody in the division, or that the division will connect with, who would actually do the creation of the modeling.
Yes, and I think actually
an economist or something.
We can commit those resources. I actually would prefer not an economist, much as I love them. I would prefer, or perhaps an economist working in tandem with a business strategist or a strategy implementation person. Recently, I saw the work that went into launching D-Day, and I saw how all the mechanics were put together to make that happen, and what the variables were, and what the deadlines were, and what the budgets were. And I'm not comparing this to that, except for I view it as every bit as urgent. And urgency has to create timelines and budgets. And so it can be done, it is done on a regular basis, and I think this discussion would benefit tremendously by kind of that amount of focus, and we can bring the resources to you to help with that.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? I have a couple announcements to make before we adjourn briefly for lunch, and Jada will tell me which ones I miss. But first of all, where's Lisa? Hello. So Lisa is going to be leaving us to run that Marion County Hub we've been hearing so much about. And we're very excited. I think as a council, we want to be, and thank you again for your presentation. We appreciate it. It was excellent.
Thank you.
We're all a lot smarter now than when we started.
Oh, I don't think so.
I don't know about that.
Come on. Lisa has done an exceptional job for the council. She came and dived right in and took on a lot of work, and has been really a tremendous asset to us, both in her commitment to this work and in her execution of the requirements of this position on an ongoing basis. So we're deeply indebted to you. We thank you. We are very excited that we will continue to work with you as the leader of the Marion County Hub. I always want to call it the Marion Barry, because Marion Barry County, but Marion County Hub. So we're very excited, and we wish you all the best. Council members, I'd encourage you to add your congratulations or anything you'd like to say to Lisa.
Well, maybe condolences would be anybody that would want to apply for a Marion County job. I don't know what's. Oh, it's good.
Thank you. Secondly, the council is going to have a box lunch while they walk through and see the new offices of the Early Learning Division upstairs here in the lovely State Lands Building. But for everyone else, there is lunch, and it's just down the street at the DHS building, which is on the left-hand side. I've eaten in the cafeteria many times. They have everything you could possibly want. And we will reconvene here at 11:50, not 11:15. And what have I missed?
You didn't. You hit it right. So Lisa will lead one group up the stairs to the 3rd floor. We are in a secure building, and so we want to make sure that you can get through the door. And there are stairs and the elevator, so Teresa and Lisa will lead you that way.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Probably Krista who would have one.
What did I do?
Hopefully you left your pocket thing at home.
I am so grateful.
My-
Oh, okay. Yeah, because, yes.
Too. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's just about noon by my clock or watch, and so I'd like us to reconvene. We actually were going to reconvene at 11:50, so we're going to make up some time here. Welcome to the continuing Early Learning Council meeting, and we've been making a lot of progress this morning, and I think we'll make more. Our next item on the agenda is the rules update, but before we do the rules update, and I know everyone is waiting with bated breath for that, as they always do for rules updates, I just want to announce that one of our Early Learning Council members, thank you, last weekend? Friday, became grandma of her 11th grandchild.
Wow.
And Vicki, we all congratulate you on the arrival, safe arrival of Hattie, and we are all envious of the fact that you don't look old enough to have high schoolers, let alone grandchildren.
Yeah.
So well done. Okay, and Megan, are you presenting on this item?
I am on one part, and then Emily Nazarov is on another.
Okay, great. So if you'll please come up. Emily will be reviewing the Strategic Initiatives Rules, which are the Early Literacy Grant Rules and the Kindergarten Partnership and Innovation Grant Rules. You may remember approving these rules as temporary in January and recommending them for formal rulemaking in March. During the meeting in March, we made a slight word change, but otherwise these rules are unchanged. There were comments and testimony when the council adopted the temporary rules in January, and these were considered and incorporated as appropriate into the permanent rules which are before us today. And then Megan is going to cover proposed revisions to the hub rules, but let's take one thing at a time and start with Emily if we can.
Sure. Chair Saxton, members of the council, my name is Emily Nazarov. I'm the State Board Administrator for the Department of Education, and I'm on the team at ODE that takes care of getting rules to the point where they are ready to be adopted. So I am going to talk to you about two sets of rules, the Early Literacy Grant Program and the Early Learning Kindergarten Readiness Partnership and Innovation Program. And basically today I'm going to walk you through the rule creation process that we used in order to bring them forward for adoption today. So both sets of rules were adopted as temporary rules by this body back in January 13, after receiving testimony by key stakeholders in the development of those temporary rules. In January, the RFA launched. In March, ELC recommended with one word change the rules for permanent rulemaking process, and we filed those rules with the Secretary of State. So once we filed the rules with the Secretary of State, that begins the public comment period. And I wanted to explain a little bit about what we do to bring in public comment. We post the proposed rules on our website. We send the proposed rules to our super list, legislators, anyone who has indicated that they have an interest in the rules. We hold a formal rule hearing. We held that on May 29th. We did not receive any testimony at the rule hearing, and to my understanding, we have not received any feedback on the permanent rules. So January 18th, we recommended that the ELC adopt these rules, and they're before you today for adoption.
Thank you. Council members, questions, comments for Emily on this set of rules?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the rules.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the rules as proposed. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. And on the phone, just to be clear, we have Dana Harganani and Pam. Have you rejoined us?
Yes, I'm here.
And who else? Anyone? Who's that?
Dana.
And this is Jim Tierney.
Oh, great.
Hi, Jim.
Fabulous.
So Marlene too.
Okay.
And just to clarify, there was a late aye. Was that in favor of the rule or was there opposition to the rule?
Any opposition to the rule? Okay, I think we're good. Welcome, council members. We're pleased to have you join us by phone. Emily, thank you for your good work and your efforts. We appreciate it. Megan.
Thank you, Chair Saxton, members of the council. For the record, my name is Megan Irwin, and I'm the Policy Director for the Early Learning Division. So what you have in front of you today related to early learning hubs are a set of rules you've already reviewed and adopted that we're making one addition to. And the addition that we're making to these rules begins on page 6. It's the third to last page in the document that you were given. And we are moving funds that formerly were distributed through county commissions on children and families underneath hub jurisdiction. So that's the only change that you're being asked to consider and adopt today. You're being asked to adopt it on a temporary basis so that we can move forward with amending these funds into the contracts for our existing hubs. And then 180 days from now, we'll go through the public comment process and bring you back a permanent amendment to adopt. The two funding streams that you are making a decision on moving under hub jurisdiction today, as directed by House Bill 2013, are Great Start and Family Support Title 4B dollars. So that's what's in front of you. It's pretty simple, just moving funds from the former Commission on Children and Families underneath hubs and taking them out of the rules that governed the former Commission on Children and Families.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Questions, comments from council members?
Harry.
Can I ask a question? The piece about the rule governing the Youth Development Division in the very beginning, were these funds originally, when the commission was sunsetted, were they to be administered through youth development, and now the decision has been made it's more appropriate they come to early learning division?
Yes, they were. It's just kind of administrative cleanup from the sunset of the commission and the creation of the early learning division.
Terry, where was that?
That's in the rule summary.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And that's the number. That's the number of the rule that we're moving it out of.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Same motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of adopting these amendments, the proposed revisions, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? Thank you. We appreciate it, Megan.
Thank you.
Let's move to our Early Learning Hub Award team recommendations. And we have Norm Smith as our council member, Duke Shepard, Policy Advisor to the Office of Governor Kitzhaber. And I saw Duke. Here's Duke. Duke, for members on the phone, is bringing a hand cart in with about 20 feet of documentation. So.
Megan, did we send out that? Alyssa's going to send them, going to be emailing them out right now. Yeah.
No, I'm not here. Thank you. Oh, okay. I didn't. Are Norm and I supposed to operate the PowerPoint?
I'm going to do it for you. I'm here to click, clicky.
I'm happy with this exercise.
Loading.
Madam Chair, members of the council, We sit before you today to present to you the second round of proposed awards for hubs. As you recall, and Duke will take off into a deeper analysis of where we started and how we got to where we are today, and then we will actually make our recommendation. But this was a process that we anticipated under statute. We have time limitations facing us. We have a cap on the number of hubs currently in statute. And what I guess I would call out today is the vast amount of inspection of the several binders you see on the table here in front of us by a lot of people. I think there were 26 different persons who had reading responsibilities for different sections of each of these applications. The award committee itself was then to look across this horizontally at all the sections and to give a recommendation back to you on the next step for awards. Duke?
Morning.
Good afternoon.
Hello, everyone. For the record, Duke Shepard from the Governor's Office. It's nice to see you all again. I will just revisit the requirements of this hub process. So through a progression of 3 legislative sessions, 3 pieces of legislation, 2 budgets, we are at the point, starting last year, where it's time to organize hubs, and we've done that through an open process of application. You all approved a total of 6 hubs last time, and I will just, you can see the slide, I will just cite some of the statutory pieces just because the statutory requirements are what guide the recommendations to you today, because the simple math of it is you had 12 letters of intent and 10 slots to fill. And in the end, 11 applications and 10 slots to fill. So someone was not going to get their way in the end, no matter what. For any community that is not served by a hub, you are required, the council is required to maintain services in those communities and to regionalize as much as possible. You may not have more than 16 hubs. It's stated as an affirmative that you can have 16. It also is stated the system may not include more than 16 early learning hubs. And the council can alter the lines of a territory only to ensure statewide coverage. So you have a responsibility to have 16 hubs. You have a responsibility to ensure statewide coverage. You have a responsibility to ensure service continuity in the event that there are not hubs. I think it is important to note that the legislation does anticipate the possibility that there would not be a hub everywhere. So you are not required to have 16. It's up to 16. The high level of readiness, the focused efforts on having communities organize themselves, there's supposed to be a high bar. This isn't an entitlement. And we want communities to get there as fast as they can, but if they can't get there, we need to acknowledge that and figure out how to get them there as quickly as possible, but in a way that's real and substantive and is more than just on paper and sort of good enough to get by. So Megan can walk you through more details if you want. You see here, the one note that I recall is that every applicant from the first round had 30 hours of Oregon Solutions technical assistance, correct?
No.
Say that again. Sorry.
Every applicant for the second round had access to 30 hours
Okay.
of technical assistance to prepare for the RFAs that you see in the binders in front of Norm and Duke.
So there you go. So a lot of technical assistance, a lot of support. The goal here wasn't, I think the first round you could say, okay, let's just open it up and see what people do. And then that gives you a sense of where they're at. And then the second time, it's really, how do we help everybody get to where we want to go? Because it doesn't serve us as a state well to say, no, you're not good enough. No, you're not good enough. And theoretically issue RFPs every year and a half or 2 until someday we get there. We got to get this thing moving. We got to get it going. And helping people get there has been an important part of the team's work over at the division. So I served on the award team. I was not one of the scorers. There were 26 reviewers. The award team was me, Norm, Jada, Pam, Megan as staff, And then we had support staff from Kim from DAS to make sure we complied with all of our requirements under procurement law.
And Danny.
Pardon
Danny.
me?
Danny.
And Danny, sorry, my coworker Danny, who is the governor's education and policy advisor. And we saw a wide variety of approaches. So everything we want in this hub work, different varieties of approaches, all focused on outcomes, different levels of capacity. So we know every community is different and they bring things together differently, and some will have strengths and some will have weaknesses. We did err on the side of getting people started. So in the recommendations we'll give you, there are some that are ready to go next week, and there are some that we don't think are ready to go for a while, but that will be in negotiation. And when they get there will be a product of those negotiations, which is exactly what you did with the first round of hubs. You had 1 started quickly and 5 that got there on different time frames that weren't pre-prescribed. So Norm, I'm supposed to.
Before Norm starts again, would you guys like to move over there? Because I know you can't see
that'd
the
be kind.
screen,
Yes,
and
I
we don't
would.
have handouts for you. So I would love for you to be able to have a chance to move. Here's one.
I'll just slide over here.
Eva, do you want to take Charles' seat, my work?
So, to the point that a number of people had their hands on these applications, and that they actually rolled up into a matrix of scores, I think the important thing to remember is, as in the first round, the awards committee actually looked across all of those data, and across each of these, and we lived with these for approximately 2 weeks, so that what we came up with had a kind of the broader view. In other words, this is not a raw score outcome. It is I think, a consensus by the award committee on everything from capacity, capability, and with this bias that Duke mentioned, but we have to get going. So even if there were insufficient or inconclusive components to an application, I think we decided that it was not appropriate to just stop and say, no, we'll wait for some supposed later round. There are 3 groups that we broke this down into, and we'll go into that, and we'll go to recommendation on group 1, if we could, Megan. So 3 of the applications were ready to move to contract negotiation on a relatively short term. These 3 that are on the screen, and I'll read them for the record: Southern Oregon Early Learning Services, Wellness and Education Board of Central Oregon, and the Blue Mountain Early Learning Hub. Those cover the boundaries of Jackson and Josephine County, Crook, Deschutes, and Jefferson counties in the second case, and Morrow, Umatilla, and Union County in the third case. I think the feeling was that there was not an absolute perfect or near perfect application. If you recall, in round 1, Marion County was the only one that we said we'd go to contract with immediately, and that there was work to be done by staff to get the rest into position to get there. Maybe not surprising, even though for some people it was a second look at applying, the outcomes that we got were still below, I think, that really high bar that we had in our head, but not impossibly far from getting there. So this group, we will be recommending to you that with some help from staff, some additional technical assistance, that probably by the September meeting, or within a reasonable time by the end of the year.
Sooner, by September at the latest.
September at the latest on these. So that's group 1, and there are 3. Would you like to do group 2, or would you like me to keep going?
Go right ahead.
All right. So it got tougher and tougher, as you might expect, and I'm sure that there are people that spent many, many hours in collaboration getting these documents to us, and may think that they were all but done in getting a decision from the council. But you'll see that in this group, there are requirements, I think, that need to be met. the clarity or the simply the ability to be convinced that the collaboration necessary in all the different elements of a community to carry this off can't just be put down on paper as a statement. I think we needed to feel convinced that all the parties were there and that all were equal participants in creating a plan. So these applications, I'll list them. The Clackamas Early Learning Hub, that's a single county. The Eastern Oregon Hub, Baker, Malheur, and Wallowa counties. The Linn-Benton-Lincoln Early Learning Hub. The Northwest Early Learning Council, comprised of Columbia, Clatsop, and Tillamook counties. And the Washington Early Learning Hub were in this second group. And a lot of issues not common to each. So we spent some time as an award group actually trying to identify the things that we would have conversations with them about to improve their application and get to contract. And I'm guessing we will, by the end of this year, be in pretty good shape with these 5 applications. And I'm seeing Megan nod. Recommendations on Group 3. And I want to stress that we were impressed by the depth of sincerity, the willingness, the effort to pull this all together. But there was still this, I would say, a sense across the award committee that we had concerns. There was something that just warranted more in-depth engagement with this group. And so the Group 3 consists of the South Coast Regional Early Learning Hub. Coos and Curry counties are in that hub. And Four Rivers Early Learning Hub, Sherman, Gillum, Wasco, Wheeler, and Hood. And, pardon? Did I leave out Hood River?
It says Hood, but it's Hood River County.
Yes, okay. Oh, yes, the slide is Hood. Well, we're back in the Hood. Okay. So I think this was an organization that didn't qualify at the outset. And so we had insight to the reasoning behind that and felt that more work could make this better. So as it states on this slide, there are definite assets in these regions. They just weren't ready for hub designation. They'll get some very direct support. And we are now working toward our 16 hubs allowed by statute. Now, we had 2 single county applications that were perplexing to us. And we knew this day might arrive after we got through round 1, that we might just have more applicants than we have hubs, that the power of the geography might suggest some other alignment. And so the recommendation today to the council will be that Polk County Early Learning Collaborative will be merged into an existing hub. And also the Klamath Early Learning Hub, we recommend be merged into the South Central. That's Douglas and Lake, which sit on either side and are contiguous to Klamath. So, Duke, I'm going to give you the recommendation for the vote.
Okay. I'll just go in, if I can go in first a little deeper on how we ended up here, because there was discussion in terms of the number of slots, statewide coverage, who's in, who's out, merging lines. There are different ways we could have gone. We could have brought you a recommendation that said merge South Coast into any of the hubs that are close to it. Could have connected it to Lincoln, connected it to Douglas, connected it to Southern Oregon. And it was our belief as a team that while they might not be ready now, it's important to hold that spot on the map for a hub for that distinct community. And the same is true of the Gorge and those counties, that holding that spot on the map is important. That gets you to 16. So once you make those decisions, you're left with the single county applications. If you all wanted to do something else, that would change the math, and maybe you could have the single county applications. But it was hard to find a logical reason to have single county applications in these 2 counties, other than county politics, frankly. And I mean capital C county politics, that when you look at other service providers, school districts, labor markets, where people live, where people work, where people get childcare, these communities all work together in some respects anyway and have shown a willingness and an interest in working together. It's really about historic government-to-government issues that kind of harken back to the system we're getting away from. So it's not going to be easy, and I want to emphasize that the recommendation to combine with a hub isn't highly prescriptive. So ideally, this will be something that sets these applicants up to build on their particular strengths, and there are different strengths in Polk County than Marion County, and jointly together work on any weaknesses they have and really figure out how to do this together. It's not your hub is being gobbled up by another hub. That's not the idea. The idea is that we've got 16, and unless there's a real logic to it, or, in the case last time, Yamhill had a particularly outstanding application to justify a county-only structure. So our recommendation to you with all of that is to move ahead with groups 1 and 2 and vote that they will be designated as hubs subject to contract negotiations. As Norm said, some might get to contract negotiations more quickly, some might take longer. We'll leave that to staff to figure out. Our hope is that everybody gets there as fast as possible. But build in enough understanding and flexibility that it could take some time. And then, so I guess however you want to manage your motions, that would be one action potentially. The other would be to contract directly for services and basically reserve the hub territory for South Coast and Four Rivers. And then direct staff to work with Polk and Klamath and the South Central Hub for Klamath and Marion County Early Learning Hub Incorporated to figure out how to make those hubs come together.
Thank you.
Could I punctuate on that last
Yes, of
point?
course.
That we perceive there to be a willingness to cooperate and collaborate on these last two, particularly from the pre-existing hubs, the ones who were in Award 1. So this shouldn't be an entire shock or surprise or unwanted. And I think that there is considerable care that will be taken in making it a comfortable association if this merger is approved by the council.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you for an excellent presentation and for the slides. And Jada just reminds me that council members will receive the chart slides in their emails, and then we'll post it to the website too. So this information will be accessible to everyone. Questions and comments before we move to any motions? Thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
I just had a question. We had talked, I think, last month about having a map that is that one of your slides.
Can we go to the maps that follow here?
We debated whether or not to show maps today.
Yeah, they're a little.
So this is what it looked like after round 1.
Mm-hmm.
And then it changes to this, subject to your approval today. But this is what it would look like once everyone has gone to contract.
Sorry, Lynn, could I add one
Yes,
thing
of
that
course.
I neglected to state more specifically? The 2 territories that are reserved for future hubs that eventually get you to 16, the plan here isn't to just leave them and at some point they knock on the door and we say, maybe you can be a hub today. The plan is for intensive technical assistance, both from the staff and from contractors and others, to really help them build a hub and get there. So a level of intensity of support and service that that's different than what we've done with the others, and that is intended to get them to be hubs very intentionally.
Thank you for the clarification. Yes, Terry.
This is Jim.
Yes, Jim.
Can I ask a question, I suppose, of Jada and Duke? I just want to be really clear that we have, as a council, the authority to simply say, we're going to direct you to be in this hub over here, or which I sort of think I heard from Duke earlier. As long as we have that authority, I'm pretty comfortable with what we're laying out.
So as I read the statute and as conferred with Kim in terms of complying with our procurement requirements, you have the ceiling on the numbers that you have to comply with explicitly.
Right.
You have the ability to redraw lines to achieve statewide coverage explicitly. And you are directed to maintain services and regionalize where possible in maintaining those services. So altogether, you are regionalizing and maintaining services in Coos, Curry, and in Four Rivers. You are altering the lines of territory to achieve statewide coverage within that 16. And you have the room to come back and designate a hub in those 2 remaining areas at such time as you see fit. It's open in statute. It is a matter of, you couldn't provide them funding in this year, but you can designate them when you feel they're ready, as long as you're under the 16.
Thank
you.
you.
So in sort of imagining, the motion, I'm trying to figure out whether or not we're saying within the motion that we're simply going to add Polk and Klamath to the 2 adjacent hubs with this action, or are we going to agree that the DLC and the staff at the Learning Division are going to administer through the biennium, or are we simply saying Polk and Klamath, you're in this hub now, gone? I'm trying to figure out how
The award
to
team's
craft a motion that says one of those 2 things.
The award team's recommendation is to move ahead with the first date and contract negotiations. They are going to be hubs. They have certainty. The second recommendation is to set aside the hub territory for South Coast and Four Rivers so that there's 4 future hubs, and that you are directing Polk and Klamath counties hubs to be part of existing hubs. In Klamath's case, to be part of the South Central hub. In Polk's case, to be part of a joint hub with Marion County, with Early Learning Hub Incorporated.
Okay, thank you, Duke.
Jada, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think the team did a great job.
Okay. Yes, Terry.
So with South Coast and Four Rivers, is the process then will be that staff will bring a recommendation back to the Early Learning Council when they believe that those 2 are contract ready? Is that the process we're looking at?
So, Chair Saxton, members of the council, I think that would be ideal. That even better would be staff and those hubs come up and brief you on their progress and then jointly say, okay, we're ready to go, please make the designation.
Okay. Okay, yes, Eva.
I was just curious about, I guess, you said that it's not a surprise for Klamath or Polk to be asked to be moved into the existing hubs.
I think what I said is it won't be a surprise for the existing hubs to attempt to expand and work with more territory. I would have to surmise that both Polk and Klamath, given their druthers, would prefer to stand alone. Right. But I think that the contiguousness of this will make it work out well.
I'm just curious about how, I'm just trying to keep in mind the loose tight that we've always talked about for communities, that to allow for them to build what they need to build, and is there room for that if we're asking other applicants to merge with existing hubs? So I just want to be mindful of that, I guess, and how is that working?
Jada, did you want to respond?
I have another comment, but not to respond.
I think one of the things that I would just suggest is the loose tight has both parts.
Right.
And so as Duke outlined those 3 criteria that the legislation sets in terms of having a ceiling of 16 hubs, that's the tight part of the process that we're also accountable to. So
right.
I think that's important here.
One final comment that we also had in discussion at the award team that I want to make sure is that we're very lucky on this council to be able to have very strong members who are part of some of the community hub, and I'm going to use the example of the Four Rivers, is the fact that we have both Terry and Kim who've been actively involved, and so we're actually hoping as staff that they as council members will be able to help us work with that community to come to a quick solution for that particular hub. And I think that we want to make sure to use that expertise of our council members. So we're hoping you'll join hands with us.
Yes.
Bobby.
I just, I think it's clear, but I'm not complete. There will not be another RFA.
That is correct.
Yes,
The
right.
process will be of mentoring and mutual support.
Emphatic head nodding.
Until there is a plan that comes forward to the council that staff and these communities together say, we perceive this community to be ready to assume responsibility for themselves, for their hub, and here's the proposal. And it could happen anytime. There could be some transformational process that they, figured out the parts that were difficult and that it could happen quickly, or it could take a year. I'm trying to get some parameters on the two that we are not approving.
So, as a council member, having even listened to the conversation we held earlier today, this sense of urgency says this isn't now just an indefinite go work it out, go work it out, go work it out. It is, let's get to a place that you described well, Bobby, where people have concluded and collaborated and checked some boxes with great sincerity that they are ready. And so the drive is to get to ready, and all 16 of these would be hubs sooner than later. That's one counselor's opinion.
Thank you. Yes, Dick.
I would recommend that each time we meet, we have a progress report on how they're coming. Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we accept first of all, I want to thank Norm and Duke. Norm in particular, he's in retirement, so I mean, this is all the stuff that he did here. Duke, he works all the time. There's no thank you.
You're welcome.
We had help, including Pam.
And Pam too.
Yeah.
Well, Pam, she's MIA. I don't know where Pam is, but she's got the bad foot. But anyway, Madam Chair, I recommend that we accept the Early Learning Hubs Round 2 recommendations.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second it.
Second.
So for those of you, thank you, Jim. For those of you on the phone, do they have this in front of them?
They do.
Okay, so the recommendations, the 3 components of the recommendation, has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Oh, wait, excuse me, we'll pause for a question. Pardon?
We'll do a voice.
We'll do a voice, everyone, okay. So yes, but first Eva has a question.
It was more of a comment. I was wondering if I
Okay,
might-
a comment's good too.
Okay, so my whole nervousness about this is that we might be leaving some people behind, and that families might not get the services that they need. And I know that we have a plan, and I think that I appreciate what Dick just offered, a progress report. I think that would make me feel more comfortable knowing like what we're doing to help those communities that we're not awarding, and how things are going, and how people are still getting their services.
Yep.
Council members, in your September meeting, you will have not only a progress report, but probably also do finalization on a vote for that. And then I would anticipate the second round that you would see with this negotiation would be in November and then January. So you'll have not only updates of what are around 1, 2, and 3, but also you'll be voting on those to bring them into contract.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to do a voice vote, and so I think it would be best if we started with the folks on the phone. And so let's start with.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Wait.
She'll call the roll.
You can do that. Okay, great.
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
And knowing who we have on the phone.
So you have Pam.
I'm going to start with Pam Curtis,
Yes.
Jim.
Jim Tierney,
Aye.
Marlene.
Dana Harganani, are you still on the phone?
Yes, and aye.
Marlene.
And Marlene Yesquin.
Yes.
And I will go through the rest of the roll. Vicki Bishop,
Yes.
Janet Doherty Smith,
Yes.
Eva Ripito,
Yes.
Krista Rude,
Aye.
Lynn Saxton,
Yes.
Norm Smith,
Aye.
Terry Thalhofer,
Yes.
Bobby Weber,
Yes.
Kim Williams,
Yes.
Dick Withnell,
Yes.
Rob Saxton,
Aye.
and let the record show that Charles McGee has left the meeting for the day.
Excellent, thank you. I want to say a special thank you to our folks on the phone can't see the volume of work this represents, but it's significant. And so I want to say thanks to our workforce on this and to Pam as well for helping get us to such a crisp conclusion in a timely manner. I think this is very exciting, and everyone in this room deserves recognition and applause for us getting to this stage of the creation and implementation of the early learning system, because now we get to start working on those results that we all like to focus on. So thank you for a heavy lift, great work, we really appreciate it, and we look forward to moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council members, one thing you may not have seen Alyssa today, but what you'll know is she's video streaming from her vacation in Florida and has sent several things to you as council members too. So she is a dedicated person.
That's not vacation.
Okay, let's keep plugging away here. We're ahead of schedule. I like that. Let's go to the item.
This is Jim.
Yeah.
Lynn, Jada asked me to call in for this, and I've got a development consultant sitting in my office. I'd like to go back to that if I can, and I want to echo that this has been a long haul, and I'm really happy with what we've been able to accomplish, and I apologize that I need to pay attention to business here for the rest of the day. Thank you all for everything you've done.
Thank you, Jim. We appreciate your help and taking time to join us for the vote. That's much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 10, professional development grant award recommendations. This is an action item, and I believe Bobby and Kim, who served on the award team reviewing the grants, are going to talk about this.
Okay. So a little bit of context. Go back to where we were this morning with early care and education. Now we're talking about that workforce. And the legislature gave us the authority to do an RFP for professional development grants for early childhood educators. And these were let in March, and were due in May. We got had $400,000 that the division could award, and we asked for specific kinds of innovation that were designed to address the items that came out so beautifully in the conversation today about the barriers that this workforce has to getting their associates and bachelor's degrees. And so we received 7 proposals. We had the $400,000 to award. The proposals totaled to almost $1 million, so obviously we couldn't, though it was a competitive process, but probably more importantly, we were looking for specific behavior innovations within the grants, and we had 5 reviewers for every proposal. So 10 people, but each proposal was read by 5 different people and scored. Those scores were then combined, and then there was an award committee that was made up of Don Woods, and Lisa Harnish, Jada, and Kim and myself,
Yes.
and from the council. And from that process, we are bringing forward today a recommendation for awarding 2 with a third one that may possibly come back depending on negotiations. But 3 scored very highly amongst this team of reviewers who scored, and the one Southern Oregon, a collaboration that has a very strong partnership. Probably, to me, I think we all agreed to this. I don't think I'm just giving my own personal opinion on this. The Southern Oregon University is a 4-year university partnering actively in this proposal and actually changing its behavior. So it's doing what we're asking higher ed to do and behave in ways that are supportive of this workforce. So this was a very important innovation. They also had the items that came up earlier. They have within their county, the counties, they have a vocational ESL that has been operating successfully, and it will go across all the colleges in this area. It's Jackson, Josephine, Coos, Curry, Douglas, Lake, and Klamath counties that are encompassed. They propose to serve 689 students in some more intensely than others. They have clearly targeted dual language learners, and they have strategies in place, culturally relevant navigators, and we are asking staff to negotiate with this team on sustainability. The budget as proposed is not a sustainable one, and so although we're supportive of the activities, we are recommending a negotiation to get them to something that is sustainable. The other one that will take minor negotiations is Central Oregon, and this is a proposal that will serve a smaller number of students, up to 90. There were a number of innovations. It was very targeted to Madras and to the Warm Springs. There was evidence that they had already, that there was already movement in place. That wasn't just talking. They're ready to go. The other partnerships were strong. They were especially strong on diversity. They are weak, and what we are asking staff to negotiate with them is their partnership with the four-year college is very weak. And so we're asking staff to have them go back and develop some kind of meaningful relationship with a four-year university. And then the third proposal, which was also highly scored, is Columbia Willamette Valley for Early Learning Childhood Workforce. That is Multnomah, Clackamas, Washington, Hood River counties. It has some very exciting innovations. They also are using navigators and some very creative ways of finding people from the targeted audiences to actually be the navigators to work. That goes also was true in the other proposals, and so and also this using the vocational ESL strategy. So that is emerging. This one, we're hoping that it can be, that staff can negotiate. The issue for this proposal is they proposed a common 30 credit ECE, Early Childhood Educator Certificate, that would be approved for all 4 of their colleges in this time period. The state has a parallel process under the HEC of creating a statewide 30 credit early childhood education certificate, and so we are directing staff to explore this further. It doesn't make sense to have a for-college effort outside of a statewide effort, and so so the negotiation is more substantial on this one. The others are kind of tweaks. This one is, depending what happens in the negotiation, may be a substantial reduction in what they propose to do, and keep the pieces that the navigators and the vocational and the outreach and some of the other components that we were so excited about. So our recommendation is to fund with minor negotiations the 2, and the third one, depending what happens in the staff negotiation process, it might have to come back to us and we would do a phone call in July, or it may be something that the staff and the applicants are able to resolve without coming back, but we that's our recommendation.
Yes. Conditional recommendations.
Conditional on this one, on the
Great.
third one.
The 3.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Bobby and Kim? I know Pam's on the phone and wants to comment, but before she does that, anyone else have anything to add? First of all, we thank you for your work. I know this is a lot of work. Everyone's working very hard, reviewing, assessing, analyzing, strategizing, so I appreciate that. Pam, are you ready?
I am, thank you very much. So I'll make a motion here in just a moment to accept the recommendations, but before I do that, I wanted council members to know that we, myself as chair of the governor's office, are asking Jada, as one of the things that she does before she leaves us, is to put together a professional development strategic plan for early childhood professionals in Oregon. This is a strong suit of Jada's. It's also a piece that we have, that we need to do, and we don't want to lose her expertise substantively on this point before she goes off to other endeavors. So with that, kind of as background, I would like to make the motion that we accept the committee's recommendation with the addition of ensuring that staff negotiates contracts. They do so in a way that is in alignment with the long-term strategic plan for professional development that we will be putting in place.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll make the second.
Thank you. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Great. Thank you, Jada, for being willing to do that piece of work, and thank you, Kim and Bobby, for bringing us to this action step here, and I'm very excited about what we're going to see as a result, so thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the Lynn Anglund Award, and that's scheduled for 1:20, and we're way ahead. We're a half hour ahead of schedule. We're so proud of that. But so what I'm going to do is move another agenda item up, because I think the speaker will be joining us for the Lynn Anglund Award, so I'm going to respect her schedule. So let's take up, if possible, the chair's report. Pam, if this is a good time for you to do that, it would be convenient for the agenda if we could move that piece up and do that now.
I'd be happy to do that. I don't have anything planned except to thank Lynn for taking over in the chair spot today. I really appreciate all of her effort for that. And also extending my appreciation to the award team. I had the pleasure of working with that group, and I want to say with regard to the Hub Awards, this is a group that worked incredibly hard on top of the 26 raters, and this has been a very diligent and deliberate process. I think we have a path forward that would be, well, it's not perfect or desirable in terms of what everybody wanted as a first choice, but it was a clear path forward, and I think a successful one. So thanks to everybody for helping to craft that. And then to Bobby and Kim and others who worked on this most recent round of professional development awards. I think we are well on our way to getting to implementation, and then our next step is to really get very clear about the outcomes that we will track as we go through implementation. So thanks to everybody for the work you have been doing, and for all of the work that will go forward from here. The last thing I will say briefly is, I mentioned just a moment ago that we are in process of getting some very concrete about deliverables that we want to happen to Jada before she leaves, to take advantage of her knowledge-based professional development plan is top among them. So you'll be hearing more about that from me and Jada in the weeks to come.
Great, thank you, Pam. Council members, questions, comments for our chair?
I'd just make the comment about our chair, Madam Chair, that she was deeply engaged in this award discussion that we had, and obviously was deep into the finer points, and without her leadership, I think it would have been hard to work through it. So I think all of us appreciated Pam's direct hands-on engagement.
Absolutely. Thank you, Norm. I'm still looking for the finer points that Pam ever misses. So I appreciate all your work here, Pam. Director, do you think we can do the second half of your report now?
Yes, Madam Chair.
That would be lovely.
Maybe we also can remind folks to sign up for public testimony.
Yes, so thank you. If you are interested in public testimony, I don't want to cause any confusion here because we're moving the agenda up and our quest to complete our work, but please do sign up for the public testimony document on the table by the door. I would appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, Jada.
So I have a couple comments, and I want to say, as Janet talked about the equity work group, she talked a lot about looking at GED, and one of the things that we may worry about is what does a GED have to do with early learning? And it actually, I don't think that many of you sitting around this table wonder at all, but it is the foundation for what we need for providers to be able to give the very, very best to those young children as they move forward. And so as you can see today, we've kind of come full circle in terms of investments in our workforce, investments in our communities, and investments in our programs. And so it's really a nice way for me to think about as I bounce off into retirement again, is that we really did come full circle. And I think on the staff's part and probably on the council's part, we didn't know if we would get to this point as soon as we did. So it's been an incredible journey. And so the changes we've all made together have been amazing for the state of Oregon. I had no idea 2 years ago when I said to the governor, yes, I think I can do this, what our journey was going to be. So I just wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you for the commitment that you're doing. And I know that I, like Alyssa, will be sitting on the streaming in many of your meetings future to listen to. I might have something in my hands or not as I move forward. But anyway, I wish you guys all a great future. And thank you very much for the last couple of years.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to celebrate Jada's service to children and families in the state of Oregon at the end of this meeting. So certainly all of you are welcome to join us for that. It's going to be, of course, an educational exercise. So think about that and kind of be excited.
Hey, Lynn.
Yes.
Lynn, it's Pam. I just want to take this opportunity right now, since I'm not in the room and can't partake of the educational exercise in a little while, to say thank you to Jada. She, we took a long time in finding the right person at the right time for the right set of tasks. And I think we found her. We had no idea she was just going to be across the river in Washington, but we are thrilled. I think that Jada came. She was the right person at the right time. And probably unbeknownst to most of the council members, John and I had a running bet that if I ended council meetings early, I won and she owed me, and if I ran them over, she won and I owed her. So Donna lost most of the time, but I'm going to miss that with her.
So I already paid Lynn off because she's getting done early also.
Yes, yeah, well, we hope. Okay, so here's where we are. We're going to have a presentation of the Lynn England Award here at 1:20. We had an early lunch break and kind of worked through it, so what I'm going to do is give us our 10-minute break now and let people step out of the room, and then we will come back and be here until we finish. I do want to say that one of the things that we'll be doing going forward, and Pam and I and the ELC staff will be working on this, is I'm a visual learner. I probably wouldn't have made it through school if some things weren't visual, and I am going to request that we put on the board or on the pushpin board at our board meetings as we go forward our milestones of success, because I think it's inspirational and motivational and keeps in front of us what we've got done and what we've got to get done. So look forward to some nice visual piece that we hold ourselves accountable to, kind of like a report card. We'll be having that in the near future. So take a yes, Bobby.
We forgot that we need to
Thank you. It's right here. Good. You're right. We need to adopt Bobby's hard work. So that
Bobby,
we talked
a
about
big group,
earlier
yeah.
this morning, we need to formally take the Child Care and Education Work Group expanded update, and we need to adopt that document, and thank you to David for reminding us as well. So can I have a motion to adopt that work product?
I so move.
Thank you, Kim. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Yes, Norm.
One matter of discussion. It is a definition. We talked throughout about a recommendation that's contained in it, but there is no black letter recommendation per se. So are we receiving the report with great thanks, or are we adopting something?
I think we are receiving the report with great thanks, and we are not sending it back. I think it's important to say the report is complete.
Is that?
The legislature told the council to produce a definition, and the council asked or gave our group the task. So it's the council's definition. So now you tell me, what is the action that the council needs to take that makes it the council's definition of quality, affordable childcare?
Then it seems to me, Madam Chair and Bobby, that we ought to adopt this as our definition.
And so is everyone clear on the definition?
It's more of a narrative, and that's why it's.
I guess my concern is that, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Marlene. No, yeah, it's more of a narrative. Yes, maybe Bobby can explain. And I'm sorry because I jumped in late at the meeting, so maybe she already did.
I think she did. We talked about it this morning. I guess my question for legislative experts is, in my experience, conciseness is important to the kind of their perception of the job being done. But Eva?
I was just going to say, I think child care definition is hard to boil down and not have it be a narrative, because we have such a broad need and types, and so I think that's why this is the document that that the Bobby and the work group were able to produce, and that's what we get. Not everything can be an elevator pitch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is a sentence in that first paragraph: affordability focuses on the ability of families to access care and early learning experiences for their child. Probably not. Well, I thought it was helpful.
It is
said
helpful.
Earlier when Bobby did explain that affordability is related to the parents' income and their ability to pay for care, we do not have the highest child care costs in the nation. But in comparison to the income of many parents, we are very expensive.
You know, you are going to have a retreat in September. You may want to bring this back and have just further discussion as you're looking at some of your.
So, thank you, Jada. I appreciate that. And I appreciate, Janet, your comments as well. So I am going to recommend for the council's consideration that we that we applaud, recognize, but receive. Thank you. But bring this up at our retreat in September, because I do believe that it will be helpful if we can not create into an elevator speech, but come up with a compact paragraph that we can all support, that we can use consistently in legislative communication to make their job easier. Would that work for everyone? Okay, cool. That's good. So everyone on the phone, are you all good with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll rescind
Yes.
the motion.
So Kim is rescinding her motion. Thank you. And I think we're good. So now we have a 10-minute break, and I'd like to see everyone back here at 10 minutes after 1. Please and thank you.
I have a question for later.
Yes.
The speaker got back at midnight last night.
So we have 2 things which I think we can get done. We'll certainly stop as soon as the speaker arrives. We have one person who's signed up for public testimony, Barbara Fuentes from the Oregon Child Development Coalition. And if she's available, I'd like her to have her come speak now, if that's possible. If not, I'm going to also hand out a letter to the Early Learning Council today from Head Start of Yamhill County for your review. Barbara, welcome. We're glad you're here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Is this on?
It's on. You're on.
Okay. I just wanted to share something with the committee. I work for Oregon Child Development Coalition, the program director in Klamath County. We were awarded 40 OPK expansion slots in the Chilcotin area. And it's just a nice story. But we started talking a year ago with the Klamath County School District and the Klamath Tribes about the high-risk area, the high need in the Chilcotin community. And the school district, specifically the elementary school, offered to provide 2 classrooms for us. They have available space. And the community had the desire, we just didn't have the funds. So when we heard earlier this year that there was going to be some funds, we got really excited. And so we applied, got 40 slots, so that's 2 preschool classrooms that will be right in the elementary school. And if anyone's familiar with that area down there, Chilcotin is north of Klamath Falls, covers a huge area from Fort Klamath to Sprague River. And they have no services right now. It's a high poverty, high crime, high unemployment, dysfunctional family, and no services, none. So the community is just, it's all they're talking about now. They're trying to enroll already, and they just found out. They're offering to put it in the paper and on the radio, but this community has historically been ignored, or they feel they have been, and their need is so great that so many of them have come forward, and the tribes too, and said that they just feel that it's finally being acknowledged, and that the children and families in this community, their worth is finally being validated. So I just wanted to share that, these 40 slots are going to a good place. And, one of the key things in these areas is transportation, and OCDC, that's one of the things we can provide for them too, along with a lot of other things. And then I probably should maybe say something. I'm on the Klamath Early Learning Hub Committee, and since I'm here, I feel a little obligated now that we know that our application wasn't accepted. We appreciate the time that was put in reading our application and considering it. We knew no was always a possibility. The main reason that we chose to apply as a standalone is the geography. We are so spread out, and I think like a lot of counties, we feel our needs are unique, and they are in some ways, and that if we got too big, and this area that's being recommended is a huge area, that we're way down there and we're going to get, forgotten. And so we thought we'd give it a try. No was a possibility, but all the work that we did we'll bring to the hub. So I think I can speak for all our committee members when, we'll do what we have to. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. So thank you. Before you go, I just want to, I'm sure there's some questions and kudos. Yes, Kim.
I wanted to say thank you, one, for it coming to us with some nice things to say. That's always
it's just
wonderful to hear. The other is my son-in-law is from Chiloquin, and you've just explained the reason why he is the way he is. So thank you.
Well, there could not be a more grateful
I can imagine
community, I think, in Oregon right now.
Right. No, I can
what
imagine
it's going to
that.
mean to the community and the children and the families.
And the other thing I want to tell you is thank you for being so gracious. I have been concerned, as well as others, about the poor, ugly, redheaded stepchildren that I often talk about. And so thank you for your graciousness. I really appreciate that, because I know it's been a concern for all of us on the council that everyone feel that they have partners that they want to partner with, and that we don't have this kind of shotgun marriage or situation. So
we're also, with the Klamath Tribes, we're now discussing early Head Start, because the school has space for that too. So it's a great example of community partners, bringing everything. The SMART program, they got the early literacy grant, so now they're working with us in our other sites. They're excited about coming to Chiloquin too, so it's
wonderful. Thank you.
It's great.
Thank you, Kim.
I also wanted to say thank you to Barbara. I had a conversation yesterday with Commissioner Belay, and he was very much a gentleman about it also. And I don't know that you know, but Councilmember Norm Smith and I were down having a conversation, and also with Commissioner Ken Kestner from Lake County. And so know that as you move forward, we will be there with technical support to be able to help the community to be able to continue to do the great things you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Barbara, I just want to say a couple things.
Don't think so soon.
Just all want to say thank you. But how long have you been working on behalf of children and family in that region of the state?
Down in Klamath County, I've been with Oregon Child Development Coalition since 2002, and there was a Head Start program out in the Chiloquin area for a while, but because of sequestration, they pulled out. But they weren't providing transportation, and that's going to be a key factor in getting the children there. But we're spread out in Klamath Falls, down in Malin, and now 30 miles north. That's then it's way up 97. But at least we're covering now, up there in that area, because it has been just no service at all. None, nothing for there was a preschool that was, some of the parents said was fairly, better than nothing. But that child care provider has taken a full-time job, so there was absolutely nothing. So we're literally getting phone calls now. The site isn't in our system yet, and they're trying to enroll. So.
Well, congratulations, and again, thank you personally for your leadership in the community and making this all happen and come together. And it was a great proposal, and we're very excited to be.
Well, we thank you for those 40 slots.
Our pleasure. Any other questions or comments for Barbara? And did you drive here today?
Last night, but I'm going home.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for making the trip. We appreciate the effort.
Well, thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay.
Now I'll get it.
Yeah. Thank you.
So everyone was testimony, but she was ill, so she sent a letter.
So the letter that we have from dated June 25th to the Early Learning Council from Head Start of Yamhill County is from Suey Linsmeyer, who's the executive director, and she was ill and not able to come today, so brought her testimony in the form of this letter. I think, again, I'll just tell you quickly for the record and for our guests today, lots of summary of results and focus and efforts on their part, but we would also like to thank you for the expansion funds, and we appreciate not only do we receive a 2% per child increase, but your decision to address the equity of the per child slot amount increases our total annual OPK budget by almost 3.4%. So again, a step forward, solid progress, and a really appreciative partner. And we thank Sui, and we hope she feels better soon. So, okay. I saw David in the hall. Duke is the speaker here. Okay, so we're just gonna pause and council members, is everyone clear? You had some materials in your packet about our meeting schedule and the retreat schedule. Does everyone have that on their calendars? And if not, please get it on your calendars. And yes, Eva.
I also had on my calendar an August 6th date. Is that still?
There will not be an August 6th meeting on a person-to-person, but there could be a call, as Bobby mentioned, if there are any approvals that need to be, so it would be less than an hour.
Okay, great, thank you.
We'll use that date if we need to.
Not in person, but it may be.
But in your packet, you do see that you have September through December dates.
And what are the dates of the retreat?
September 10th and 11th.
Okay.
And they will be in Portland. And then
Okay.
you will be on the road again in November.
All right.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the August 6th meeting tentatively for morning or afternoon, or?
Not happening.
Not happening.
Would you like to make a reference? If you have to have a call, would you like it in the morning?
Yes, if we have to have a call in the morning would be great.
All right, from 9 to 10, how's that?
Great, thank you.
Okay.
That's okay.
And the Early Learning Council retreat in September in Portland is where?
To be determined.
Okay. So if you would like to use our Clackamas River campus, which is on the Clackamas River and about as gorgeous as it gets, we would be happy to host.
And if we just have a spot determined.
And it's free.
It's a very good price.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have wildlife.
In addition to the
We have
council.
deer and heron and ducks.
Sounds
and-
like our house.
Pretty cool. So
Sorry, I just realized.
it's okay, I know. What I'm gonna do, she's here. Perfect, yay, all right. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is the annual Lynn England Award. And Bobby Weber is going to present this award and is also going to share with us the history of the award, which recognizes people and organizations who improve safety, quality, affordability, and access to childcare at state and local levels. So I'm going to tee that up for Bobby, and
then you and I join them for a picture.
Okay. Welcome, Speaker Kotek. We're thrilled to have you here.
Except we want it out of plastic, it'll be prettier.
Oh yeah, well, plastic is always good. Do you want me to?
It would be good if you all were at the
There's
mic.
the camera right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Well-
streaming.
Where do you want?
So if you actually stand right here where you are, Bobby, that will work.
Okay, very good, okay. Well, this is a great honor for the council and for me personally to be able to be the member of the council who is awarding the Lynn Anglin Award to Speaker Tina Kotek. This is coming full circle. When we lost Lynn, it was Tina who on the floor of the House read the resolution honoring her for her work on early childhood. So to be able to now give you the award is a real joy. And it would be hard to imagine anybody who more deserved this award, so we, there are so many things that we could say, so but I won't go through all of them, but we're very lucky to have you as an Oregonian in all the roles you've played. You have consistently supported children and their families, whether it was getting food onto their tables or advocating for them, and now in your leadership role and the important things that have happened with the health insurance programs, with the work that we have been doing in creating the hubs, and your leadership in making all of that come to be real and now being actually implemented. And then the one I've worked the most closely with you on, the employment-related daycare. And not only have you consistently, since I've known you, seen the importance and worked to make sure that program really served children and family, you're still doing it, and you're still continuously improving the employment-related daycare program. So it is a great honor, and I can't imagine anybody who more deserves the Lynn England Awards.
We have to do a selfie now, too.
That's right. Thank you all. Can I? Yes, please.
Thank you. This award means a lot, having known Lynn. It seems like a good opportunity just to say something about the honor it is to have it presented to me by Bobby. In 2005, when I was at Children First for Oregon, my first meeting with Bobby was in a Thai restaurant in Corvallis, because people were like, you need to meet Bobby Weber and talk about employment-related daycare. And we were instant friends. So thank you for all your work. And I did serve with Lynn on the Oregon Commission for Childcare, and it was a real loss when she died. What I loved about Lynn was, as a small business owner, she really understood the importance of providing options for her employees when it came to childcare and being able to afford good quality childcare, and her advocacy on the tax credits in particular, and just having someone who, as a small employer, could explain it and talk about it was just incredibly important. And frankly, those tax credits are coming up for renewal in the next legislative session. So we're going to need more employers of all sizes to come and talk about the importance of those tax credits for having the option for their employees. So it's a huge honor to get this award, and I have a great place in my office for it. So thank you all. And if I can just take a few minutes, because I want to thank everyone here on the Early Learning Council for all your hard work. You know, since we have moved forward with legislation in 2012 and 2013 around building the foundation of the next step on early childhood education in the state, you've all been working extremely hard. And that goes to everyone who's watching from around the state, the hub applicants, all of the providers. This has not been easy work, trying to think about how we build a structure that will allow us to grow and have new investments so we can make sure that every child in the state is ready to succeed in school when they do enter school. So you're doing great work. And one of the things that was important for me to come here today, in addition to receiving the award, is to encourage you and those who are watching to think about what is the next step on early childhood education in the state. It goes beyond the individual community work around the hubs. It's really about making a significant investment, bigger than we've done before in the state. So I wanted to put out a proposal today for people to be thinking about, it's sometimes hard to talk about wanting to do more and not knowing where you're going. So let me put out an idea. If we're really going to take the next step in early childhood education and preparation so we can hit those third grade reading goals and other things, we have to talk about new investments or reprioritizing current resources here in the state. So I would say that we have to consider a $250 million investment for the next biennium. And that breaks down in two ways. One of those ways that we have to spend that money is we probably need about $150 million to move forward in full day kindergarten. When we passed the legislation saying everywhere in the state should have full-day kindergarten, we really didn't talk about how we would find the money for it. But we all know that whether it's just making life easier for working families so they can have their child in full-day kindergarten, to the value of full-day kindergarten for having students ready in first grade, $150 million would put us way down the path in terms of providing full-day kindergarten around the state. So I think we have to think about that. And that is in addition to our K-12 budget. We've fought very hard for a strong K-12 budget. I don't want to see us trying to drag money away from there to fund this. So we have to have a serious conversation about finding $150 million for full-day kindergarten next biennium. So that leaves $100 million for other parts of early childhood education. One of the things that we are hearing a lot from families as the economy recovers and people are back to work is that we need to do more for working families. So I would argue we probably need about $40 million more for employment-related daycare to make the program more accessible, to add more families to the caseload. That would probably help us add about 2,500 families to the current caseload, employment-related daycare. We're undergoing a conversation right now about there are things we could probably do internally to the program to make it even more flexible for families, but you really do need to get more families on the program, because as people go back to work, whether they're coming off of TANF or they're back to work for the first time since the recovery, they're going to need access to childcare. And that subsidy is incredibly important. So $40 million there. The other $60 million, to round out the $250, there's a variety of investments we need to make, whether that's improving quality in our existing settings, whether it's recognizing that the increased screening we're doing could increase the number of referrals to early intervention. How are we going to help that system? We certainly want to continue to support local capacity through the hubs and innovative projects. And we know that home visiting works. We could be doing more on the home visiting end to serve more at-risk families. So that $60 million can go in a lot of different ways, but those are the things that we know work, that we know we need to be doing more in. So I think that $250 million needs to be on the table as a discussion. And I look forward to working with you and other stakeholders and providers and, frankly, every Oregonian to say, if we're going to make sure children are ready to succeed, we have to be serious about doing more in terms of an investment. So thank you for allowing me to put that out there. Happy to take questions, but really this is about celebrating Lynn and really getting serious about doing more in the state. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker Coates. Are you willing, I know you're just back from travel abroad, and I know that produced a lot of jet lag, but are you willing to, council members may have a few questions?
I'm happy to, yeah.
Council members, questions? Yes, Terry?
I just have to say what I always say when we consider that we don't start at zero, that zero is the pregnant woman, the preconception woman, and when we talk about expanding home visiting, that we really look at expanding it to pregnant women, preconception health, all of those issues, especially after we heard Dr. Thornburg last time we met, and issues around maternal nutrition affecting grandchildren. That's a lot of load to carry. So.
I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I'm pleased with the metrics. The amount of families that are connected with Medicaid through the coordinated care organizations and what they're doing there. We have new opportunities there that we haven't had in the past. That doesn't put all the onus on the CCOs, but the fact that we're actually asking about the care the pregnant women are receiving in Medicaid in a different way and how they're getting connected with their community resources is huge. So absolutely.
Great, thank you, Terry. Other questions, comments?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Norm.
I'm curious. If this proposal has purchase in the governor's office in the formation of a budget?
That's a great question. I had a conversation with the governor yesterday. He has been very committed to early childhood, and he's certainly in his budget process, they're starting to put their budget together. One thing we agreed on, maybe not necessarily all the details, it was you have to put out some marker of starting a conversation. And I don't know what number he'll end up on and whether or not that 250 is achievable, but that really will move us to the next level here. And so he and I are in agreement that we have to consider doing more.
Okay, great. Congratulations.
Thank you
for joining us.
Thank you.
And we are very appreciative of all your efforts.
Well,
thank you.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you. I'm very honored. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to have a brief and celebratory activity on behalf of our retiring director. And before we do that activity, I just want to give you some of the highlights of Jada's tenure at the Early Learning Council. As you know, she'll be retiring from her position this summer. We're, of course, trying to get a whole lot of work out of her before she goes. And we're very excited about her next adventure, which includes a grandchild, for which I'm never forgiving her that she's beating me. But since Jada stepped into the position 2 years ago, she's helped turn kind of the theory and the ideas of the Early Learning Design Team into a reality. Oregon reorganized its early learning services, secured federal Race to the Top grants totaling $30 million to establish quality early learning environments and to get Oregon kids ready for kindergarten. She's overseen the launch and the establishment of the Oregon's early learning hubs, which is, of course, the keystone to this design effort. She's also overseen the implementation and expansion of the quality rating and improvement system, and I don't know if she's responsible for moving the T at the front end of that acronym, but we're thrilled. That has provided quality environments for over 19,000 early learners across Oregon, as well as the Early Literacy Grant, the Kindergarten Innovation Fund, OPK expansion, the list goes on and on. And she's done it with a great deal of good humor and a willingness to dive in, particularly in legislative sessions, and keep lots of people moving forward with a positive attitude. And as we all know, that takes a lot of energy. Jada, as you're leaving, there are some big shoes to fill, and we want to thank you for your work. On behalf of Governor Kitzhaber, the Early Learning Council, the Early Learning Division team, thank you for all you've done for Oregon's children and families. We are very grateful. Because of you, we're even closer to reaching Governor Kitzhaber's 40-40-20 goal, and we've got our eye on that prize, and we appreciate your direct impact in helping us get there. We also know that you have a tough and exciting job ahead of you being a grandmother, and so as a send-off, part of what we thought we could do is get you all situated as a grandma with your home reading library for your grandchild. And so the members of the Early Learning Council have each brought today the books that they think are so important for early learners. And I have to say it was a real privilege, and we're going to send it off to the New York Times as the list of books for your children and your grandchildren. But it was fascinating to me. Everyone made their own picks. I think we have 0 duplications. And people all it's just like the NFL draft or something. Everyone feels very excited about their picks. So what I'm going to ask you to do today is if we can bring those gifts up here, and we're going to have each person who brought books tell Jada what books they're giving for her grandma's library, and then why they made those selections, because it's really a great list of starter books for grandchildren.
Madam Chair, may I represent Dick, who was not able to be here quickly in his absence, just to get us started?
Yes, let's get us started.
Did he give my grandson a car?
It's a new car. No, I'm going to come around, Jada, if that's okay. So, first of all, you all may know that Dick has a propensity for sharing this special T-shirt as an option. And he wanted me to be sure to know that it does not come with a scholarship.
Oh dear.
He also wanted to share this really personal book with you. This is a book that has been written by his daughter and illustrated by some folks that he's been working with in his work. And so he wanted to express his apologies for not being here, but appreciate you and wish you well in your endeavors.
Thank you, Krista. And I will make sure to tell Dick, because I got to see this before it went to print, and this is going to be very special for this library.
Thank you. Okay, the next
Winfield is also purple, by the way, which are also the University of Washington Huskies. I just wanted to point out.
You guys are so with it. Okay, so our next presentation is from Chair Curtis, and her book selections, one of which almost didn't make it out of our house this morning because my husband and I thought it was just the cutest thing we'd ever seen. So there's that, and we're going to save it. We'll do this. Where did she go?
Hey, Teresa, will you do me a favor and keep a little record for me here? Thank you. You know, kind of like a baby shower.
Without the diapers?
Yeah, no diapers.
That's interesting.
So one of the things that on Monday I was able to go to a doctor's appointment and also to the head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And I actually have been gathering a library, so you guys have absolutely rock.
So it is a boy.
It is a boy.
It's not twins.
It's not twins, but he is
absolutely beautiful.
He's big.
Oh,
he's a big baby.
Did you get to do a 3D?
Yes.
Oh.
Baby faces. There you go.
Yes.
So I am kind of irreverent. I have been in early learning and education forever, but I've not been a grandparent, and I don't know that I remember much about parenting. So I'm making fun of the horns on the baby in the 3D, which my daughter did not appreciate, by the way. So here I can go say, here's baby faces.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Jamberry. Oh, these are all favorites. Jamberry's a great one. You guys all have to see. You all see.
We're not even know which one did not make it out of your house.
So that big one, what's the big one?
Head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. I mean, I immediately ordered it from Amazon because it's just too cute. Okay, so now these are from Vicki.
I knew that. Thank you.
And they're just washable.
They're washable.
Because they like to chew on them.
Yeah.
Baby cakes washable and counting kisses washable. So,
and the dream catchers for the baby.
And the American Pediatric Society announced yesterday, I'm sure you all heard it on NPR, that the most important thing we can do, and this totally resonated with our work, is you take that little 6-month-old baby or 4-month-old baby and you put them on your lap or whatever, and you start reading to them immediately with board books and big shapes. So they have done a lot of research now showing that that is the really critical part of early learning, is getting reading to babies very young.
With a felt board.
Exactly.
There you go.
With a felt board, no less, yes. And this is from me. Thank you, Krista.
I just did these bows tight.
I wish I had scissors, but I don't.
I've never seen this before. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I am really good at opening presents. Krista, this comes from being in a very green building, doesn't it? We're using brown paper and recyclables. So, anyway, thank you. Okay, the pokey little puppy.
Oh, yay. Oh, yeah.
And Dr. Seuss, hand, finger, thumbs, and toes. We have some body part things going on, and cars and trucks and things that go.
Oh.
Thank you very, very much.
I like the pokey puppy.
That's for me.
Okay. Did yours get to be tied so I can?
Yeah, you can just slide it off. Yeah.
Is that the one you let her have in their 25-mile home you can let go?
Yeah, that's right.
So now, am I supposed to keep this at my house, or do
Yes.
I share this back?
No, I think this is
she'll get.
All
If
right.
there are duplicates, you can hand off to your daughter, but this is for you.
Oh, yes. Where the wild things are. And how to babysit a grandma. That would be needed. Thank you very much, Lynn. How to babysit a grandma. I've made that comment. I've often taken care of their dogs, and I said, just so you know, I'll probably leave the kid just like I'll leave the dog and walk out the door.
And who was Corduroy from?
That is from me. That's a special book at our house because Sam, who will never hear me say this because he has no interest in his mother's work, called it Corduboy when he was little, and so.
Called it Cordboy?
Corduboy. Well, he couldn't say corduroy, so he just called him Corduboy.
Cute.
Corduboy.
Great
Thank
book.
you, Terry.
I think these go together.
Yeah, yes.
These two go together. From Brown Bear and the Very Hungry
Brown
Cat.
Bear's for me.
Thank you. Brown bear, what do you see? And the very hungry
I came from some
That's from me.
And that's from Bobby.
And there's a
There's another one.
um, 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed.
Oh, this is
one
all
bell
right, so
off
this is
and
my
broke
favorite.
kids.
This is my- this is-
These are because my grandkids have all wanted. These were books. They said again, when they could
Again.
hardly talk. Again.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're tested.
So this is, my daughter had this one, and I was reading it to her, and she was jumping on the bed, fell off, and cut her head. So there's long history in our household too with that.
Brownberry was is one of Lucas's favorites.
Oh, good.
It was when I first started, well, from the very beginning, started reading to him. Yeah,
I have it.
So, and he would just look at the pictures like, oh. And now he's also moved on to one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. He giggles at the pictures, so I recommend that one as well.
Okay.
Okay, and this is your, another one, because you can never have too many of
That's right,
those.
the wild
That's for the
beast.
car. Green eggs and ham. And I just have to tell you all, if you have
Sam
not
Ham.
seen Jesse Jackson, read Green Eggs and Ham. You can go on YouTube, you can Google it. He did it on Saturday Night Live, I think when I was in college. It is the best reading of Green Eggs and Ham you have ever seen. Jesse Jackson. It's hysterical.
Okay.
I am Sam. Sam, I am.
And I haven't seen this one. Press Here.
So this is a New York Times bestseller, and it says pressed here. And as you open it up, it's press here and turn the page. Press the yellow dot again. So there's 2, then there's 3. Well done, and now press again.
Oh,
so,
we're getting
now
counting,
there's 5.
color
Counting,
recognition,
coloring,
turning the
yes.
pages.
Yes. Yeah, I used to be a teacher.
Yeah.
So thank you. That's good.
That's pretty cool.
There you go. This is Dana. You guys, I can't believe you pulled this off without me knowing. Does she have shots in here, Dr. Argonati?
No, an immunization record.
No.
Old wallet size
Yeah,
one.
Those kind of shots. I'm like, what do you mean?
Not that talking about 10 minutes till bedtime. Dana's still living this with.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, she's got 3 little boys that we got to see one time. So 10 minutes to bedtime. Oh, Jamberly, this is a good one.
That's a wonderful one.
And Good Night Gorilla. So obviously you can tell bedtime is a big issue in the Argonati household. And Pika Who.
Oh,
that one's
That
cute.
is
Yeah,
a
it's
fun
cute.
one. Yeah. Oh, you guys, this is wonderful. Thank you.
And I
Carrie.
think, this is gift number 2, because gift number 1 is still coming.
Yeah.
And I did the Boynton book, so the, what is it, Moo Ba La La, the pajama party, because my little grandson loves the pajama party book, and then the barnyard dance. So those will be coming. I'll get
I love those
Thank
Boynton
you.
books.
Lucas
Oh,
also loves
little
his
mouse.
copy of
Look at that.
Fuzzy Bee.
Finger puppets.
Yeah,
Okay.
Oh,
And
same one. That one can go
brown
to
bear,
somebody
brown
else's
bear.
house.
Good. All right. And this,
Yeah.
look at this.
My fave.
Yes.
'Cause you guys
Very
love
good.
it.
'Cause you
Yeah.
can feel it.
He loves it.
It's my favorite.
I can hand it to him in the car and he looks at it.
I have to say, the public health nurse in me, if you haven't had a whooping cough booster, as a grandma, you need to go get yours.
Oh, yes. They will tell her that at the hospital. It will be okay.
But before the baby's born.
Yeah, you could go get it now.
So you can, right.
And all the adults in the household should go get their
I
whooping
was going to
cough
say,
booster.
we got to hear that on Monday, and I was going to wait till I fell or did something and then get the tetanus shot.
No, you don't need the tetanus, you need the whooping cough.
So I will do that.
I don't have it. If I'd known, I could have packed it in a cooler and everything.
I will,
Make sure you really had it. No
I will email you when I
excuses.
got the shot.
So we have, again, congratulations and thank you, Jada, for outstanding service. And I feel like I have to stand up to do this because it's from the governor, so it's serious. Now I have to be serious. But
Then I
this
better stand up too, 'cause he's
spectacular plaque, which kind of seems like it's in 3D for someone my age, but I got it here. On behalf of Oregon's children and families, thank you for your leadership in transforming Oregon's early learning system. Governor John Kitzhaber, June 25th, 2014. Congratulations on behalf of the governor.
Thank you very
much. Thank you very much. Okay, is there anything else for the good of the order today?
No champagne?
And we will, someone asked me, we will send out the list of books here so that you can build your own libraries for your grandchildren, and some of you may be more children.
This might be my director's message. We'll post
Yes,
it.
that would be great. That's perfect. I love that idea. Okay, I think we are officially adjourned. Have a wonderful summer.
Here.